Chapter 648. They were supposed to be running around in all directions. However, the little figures that Li Yunxin obtained from the secret path of the Shaoyin Mountain blocked the way of those strange beasts according to his will. In the end, these fools who were in a killing frenzy went straight into the enemy's formation instead of killing each other. If it was the army formed by the demons on the land, it would have collapsed by this time. However, these sea monsters had some strategy in managing their army. Faced with this sudden change, while paying a heavy price and discarding many corpses, they gradually retreated and formed a strong formation again. Before, the strange beasts could easily tear an opening with their magical powers. But now the opening was getting bigger and bigger, and the ferocious beasts were also scattered. Without the supernatural abilities of the swarm of bees, and their spiritual wisdom was far less powerful than that of the demon race in the sea, they were just ferocious beasts. It was impossible to kill all of them for the time being, but it was not difficult to stabilize the formation and not pay any more casualties. But the army, which originally wanted to protect General Shifang and kill Li Yunxin's spirit, had a total of 1,200 people, but it had been completely wiped out. Qi Wen, who had revealed her true form, watched all this from the sky. And Red Lady cast her magical powers in the higher sky to maintain this restriction, trapping many of the demon navy in the huge water. At this time, it was really hard to say whether the allied forces had surrounded the two great demons, or the two great demons had surrounded the allied forces. When the attacks of the strange beasts gradually slowed down, the majestic Qi Wen's true form, wrapped in thunderclouds in the sky, flashed with a golden light and returned to her human form. Wei River Lord Li Yunxin stood on the cloud and looked down. At this time he was wearing a full suit of armor, shining brilliantly, majestic and gorgeous like a god of the astral world. And below, in the sea of corpses and blood, there was only a lone human figure standing there. The 1,200 demon soldiers were all killed, and a few demons with profound cultivation base saw that the situation was not good, so they killed their way out, leaving only General Shifang here. Li Yunxin slowly descended from the cloud, raised his hand, and those little people and strange beasts suddenly turned into many streams of light and were all taken back by him. Just like that, there were no living beings within 100 feet of the general. The two of them seemed to be surrounded by the allied forces of the monsters and demons in the sea. But in reality, no one dared to act rashly anymore. After seeing Lu Ke's terrifying methods, who wouldn't be afraid of him releasing a flood of tyrannical beasts? Now that he had called back those ferocious beasts, it was more frightening to see the beasts spread out, but it was more frightening to see them swarm out. This fellow is terrifying. General Shifang was at the true realm and could have escaped with his life. But looking at his body now, it was tied up with a circle of shiny ropes. Electric arcs swam across the rope. Not only did the water demon not have the ability to use its magic, it couldn't even move its limbs. A quarter of an hour ago he was still talking big with satisfaction. 10 breaths ago, he was still rejoicing that he had been pulled into the formation by the old tortoise and that his life was not in danger. But he didn't expect things to change so quickly. In just 10 breaths he was tied up here. Although there were water demons around him, no one dared to come forward and save him. They could only see Li Yunxin's violent expression. He stared at him with a creepy gaze and slowly landed in front of him. General Shifang had been promoted to his current position, so he naturally knew when to say what. Even though the sea was now almost full of water demons, and what he said and what happened today would spread throughout the entire ocean in the future, in order to save his life, what couldn't he do? Before the terrifying malefic star could speak, General Shifang immediately burst into tears and wailed, "Dragon King, please spare me." Li Yunxin landed in front of him, 3 steps away. Hearing General Shifang's earth-shattering howl, the surrounding sea demons made an uproar. There were disdainful, sympathetic, indignant, and some who wanted to rush up. The small demons in front of the formation were impulsive, but the big demons in charge of the army were not stupid. The Shinryu Immortal Lord forbade people from coming into contact with the people on land. But just like the East Ocean Dragon King, who wasn't curious about what was happening on land, they had thought that the so-called Dragon Son from the land was just a random Dragon King. But now that he had shown his true form, he was more powerful and brilliant than any of the emperors on the sea. They also said that the demons on the land had low cultivation strength and were just a mob. But this person, no matter if it was the strength of his body, the vastness of his power, the depth of his realm, or the number of spiritual treasures, they were all beyond their imagination. If they had known that such a person was here, they wouldn't have come with only a few thousand soldiers. This person was already like this. How terrifying was the female demon who had been silently supporting him in the sky. At first, they thought that the female demon could only kill the Dragon King of the West Ocean when he was traveling alone. No matter how powerful she was, there was always a limit, and she couldn't compete with the army of demons in the sea. But now, if these two terrifying guys worked together, the remaining nearly 10,000 people would not only be unable to win, but would also have to retreat while fighting. It was all that General Shifang's fault. He had angered this malefic star. Why didn't he ask him to leave? These two people would require at least tens of thousands of Navy soldiers to resist them. What kind of monsters were these from the land? Now that such a monster was here and they had just suffered a loss, who would want to live long enough to ask people to stop them? Only a few big demons shouted a few times to save face. They couldn't just watch their own kind fall into the hands of the people on the sea, not daring to help and not saying a word. However, Li Yunxin didn't pay attention to those shouts. He was 3 steps away from General Shifang, but he only took 2 steps. When he took the first step, the sea monster had just finished howling and took a breath. When he took the second step, the sea monster opened his mouth again and wailed again, "Dragon King." These were the last 2 sentences he ever uttered in this world. Wei River Dragon King raised his hand and slapped him in the face first. The poor demons in the true state had strong bodies and were extremely difficult to die, which became the most terrifying thing at this time. Half of the bones in the General Shifang's face were smashed, and his 2 eyeballs hung out. No matter how he wanted to beg for mercy, he couldn't say a word. He screamed in pain, but he couldn't die. The dazzling rope on his body hung him up, but it also prevented him from falling down, unable to move. After smashing half of this guy's face, Li Yunxin reached out and pulled him. He didn't touch him at first but just brushed him lightly. But in an instant, General Shifang's high-pitched scream went up a notch, and turned into a whistle. All the armor and clothes on his body were turned into pieces. On his exposed skin, there was a cut that was so deep that the bone could be seen every finger's width. From his neck to his feet, the cuts were even and continuous. It seemed that an old master with exquisite knife skills had cut them one by one carefully with a thin and sharp knife. Li Yunxin's movements were as smooth as flowing water, without the slightest pause. As the cut marks appeared, he waved his hand again. A shower of water came out of nowhere. No, it was not rain but a strong smell of wine. It was the best aged jade wine in the Midland. The wine poured on the sea monster's body. He stretched his neck and could only scream silently, but he couldn't make any sound. A great demon in the true state shouldn't be in such pain. The rope that tied him up must have a magical power that sealed all his abilities, making him no different from an ordinary person for the time being. After doing this, Li Yunxin didn't stop. He stared at him again and raised his hand again. There was a flurry of snow in the air. But it wasn't snow at all. It was obviously fine sea salt of the finest quality. Sea salt and strong wine were all sprinkled on the sea monster's wound. If his eyes were still there at this moment, they would have turned white from the pain. If his tongue was still there, he would have bitten it to commit suicide. Now both were gone. The muscles of the sea monster in the true state, which should be as hard as iron, were trembling quickly because of the extreme pain, as if he had a life of his own. Li Yunxin did all this in the blink of an eye. The surrounding demons were still stunned. They didn't know what to say. But the man from the Midlands slowly relaxed his brows, and his violent eyes softened a little. However, this softness didn't seem to be because his hatred for the General of 10 Directions was fading. It was more like, he was originally violent and sinister because the demon in front of him spoke arrogantly and made him hate him. But now he became gentle, because in his eyes, this was no longer a human or a demon. He had become a dish. Li Yunxin stretched out his hand and pinched a piece of meat on the General of 10 Directions with 2 fingers. With a little force he tore it off smoothly. Once the piece of human meat left the demon's body, it immediately became transparent and elastic. It seemed to be some kind of conch meat or octopus meat. The true body of the General of 10 Directions was a nautilus, but in fact, it should be the meat of that nautilus. Li Yunxin narrowed his eyes slightly, put such a piece of meat into his mouth and chewed it. He swallowed it. The demons were all in an uproar, and then fell silent. It was not uncommon for demons to eat other demons. But why did this man from the Midland continent eat the General of 10 Directions of East Ocean in such a terrible way? If he remembered correctly, it was because he ignored the 3 people who had cursed him. It wasn't until the General of 10 Directions jumped out and said something about Madame Minuet that he suddenly exploded. He had thought that it was just an excuse to attack the coalition army of demons and demons on the sea. But now looking at this scene, was it really just because of a few words? Was it really just for the General of 10 Directions? Was he going to take the head of the general of 10 directions and eat its flesh raw from the army? What on earth was this terrifying man from the mind of Midland Continent thinking? It was in such a strange silence that Li Yunxin ate half of the general of 10 directions' body. The demon was still alive. Although half of his head was broken, he gradually learned how to make sounds with his chest and stomach. He was moaning miserably, and it was hard to tell whether he was cursing or begging for mercy. Every time he moved, his chest, which had been eaten by Li Yunxin until only half of his ribs and diaphragm were left, would rise and fall once. It was extremely terrifying. Maybe he was full or maybe he was tired of eating. Suddenly he spat into the sea and frowned. He flipped his palm again and suddenly, a small transparent cube appeared. Without making a sound, he tossed the artifact into the sky and then the broken body of the general into the sky as well. The transparent cube spun and grew bigger with a buzzing sound, covering the remains of the general of 10 directions within it. Both of them floated in the air, motionless. It was as if this body was sealed in amber. However, this amber was one of the 10 great treasures in the history of Daotong, the immovable cube. Once this treasure was activated by the incantation and placed somewhere, it would be difficult to move it even if the world was turned upside down and the seas dried up and the rocks crumbled. Now it was sealing the tragic body of the general of 10 directions, hanging in the sky of the East Sea. If not for Li Yunxin's incantation, it would probably remain there until the day the world was destroyed. He raised his hand and sneered. With a slight flick of his finger, 4 words appeared on the immovable cube. It was like the epitaph of the general of 10 directions, but also like an epigram left for the future. Die of a cheap mouth. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the demons, he finished all this before rising into the air and standing on the immovable cube. With a cold expression he said in a cold voice, "Little you dispel the restriction. Let this bunch of trash go for now. Tell them to go back to their respective masters if they have their lives. Li Yunxin, the Dragon King of the Wei River, has come to the East Sea. He's going to peel off the skin and pull out the tendons of these useless people one by one. Because some bastard of the East Sea King touched someone he shouldn't have. This debt will either be paid together, or with the head of Lord of the East Sea." Chapter 649. In this era, it was often said that a woman had to show enough respect to a man. Although Red Lady and Li Yunxin didn't have a particularly close relationship, she did show enough respect to him in front of the sea monsters. As soon as he finished his cold words, the female monster sneered in the sky, "You've settled the score but I haven't. But now they look like stray dogs, it's disgusting. Go back and tell your masters. Anyone who says that they have eaten the flesh and blood of the Lord Dongting, cut it off and send it here. Or, a few days later I will go to them one by one. At that time don't blame me for killing them." After saying this, the golden light in the sky suddenly dissipated, and the sunlight sprinkled down again. The frozen sea suddenly made waves, and the corpses piled up on it all fell down, dyeing a large area red. The monsters looked at each other and for a moment they were in a dilemma. This Wei River Lord and Red Madam's methods were truly frightening, far surpassing common sense. At first they only thought that it was a powerful demon from the land, but there was always a limit to how powerful they were. Those people from the land were used to fighting alone, and were also used to gathering mobs, so they certainly hadn't seen the power of the elite army on the sea. Even a demon in the mysterious realm had to obediently surrender to the formation of thousands of people. Since they were attacking from all sides, they naturally had to take them down as soon as possible. They didn't expect that it was these 2 fiends. It wasn't that they weren't strong enough, but these 2 were too strong. Not to mention the one who was far beyond the mysterious realm, but that Lord Wei River of Shi who was in the mysterious realm. Where did he get so many treasures and methods? In this confrontation not only did they fail to protect the people they wanted to protect, but also a whole army was annihilated. Before they thought that they couldn't lose their spirit, but now they had to think about whether to fight or to escape. But in the end they still had to escape, or to put it nicely, temporarily avoid the sharp edge and think about the long-term plan. They had to go back and carefully investigate the origin and methods of these 2 people from the land. Then they had to think about whether to win with a strange strategy or to attack with the army. These things couldn't be decided by the demons leading the army, they had to let their masters decide. In the end he used such a thought to convince himself. He cursed again in order to regain some face for himself. But he cursed very carefully, afraid that he would anger the 2 devils again. Only then did he ring the gong and leave. After these demons retreated, Red Lady descended from the sky and returned to Li Yunxin's side. He stood on the immovable cube. The immovable cube was quite big. It could hold 2 people and was about the size of a quiet room. Li Yunxin did not seem to be in a hurry to leave this place. Instead, he took out a table from his sleeve with a wave of his hand. He spread a piece of paper on the table and pulled out a pen from somewhere. He waved his hand at the surface of the sea, and a column of water rose up. More than 1,000 demons had died, and the seawater had been dyed red. Now, when he dipped the brush into the water, it was as if he had dipped it in cinnabar. Li Yunxin put the pen on the paper. Red Lady stood still, looked at the paper, and then looked at his brush. She was a little puzzled. "What are you doing?" Li Yunxin snorted and laughed. "Look, Su Yusong and Zhuomuxia wrote down the love letter on paper. When you and I saw it, we felt that it was interesting, right? 2 people with supernatural powers, but they wrote love letters with a mortal's pen and paper. Ah, how romantic. But now, we had a great battle on the sea. It was the first time we showed off our might and made a name for ourselves. Isn't this kind of thing worth writing about? I'll learn from them. I'll write like this and keep it. In the future, when people see this, they will also think that I'm an interesting person. Don't you think so? Let me think. The first sentence I should write." He pondered for a moment and put down the brush. While writing, he said, "The autumn wind is cool, the colorful flags flutter. Today we welcome the annual." When he said the first sentence, Red Lady smiled. Previously, she was hurt by Li Yunxin on Cloud Mountain. She said that the 2 of them had broken off all ties. But later she chased Su Sheng away. It was said that she chased him all the way to Tokaria. During this period, she didn't know what happened or what reason she understood. Now that she saw him again on the sea, although she was a little jealous like a little girl, she didn't have the appearance of being entangled with him like before. Perhaps it was because of the fusion with the dragon soul. Her obsession as a ghost cultivator had weakened a lot. When she smiled at this time, she looked more like an old friend or confidant. Perhaps she also knew that this kind of relationship made people like Li Yunxin feel more comfortable. She listened to Li Yunxin with a smile, and when he put down the brush, she also looked at the paper. Then her expression changed slightly. What Li Yunxin said was completely different from what he wrote. Now, what was written on the paper was, "My words may be heard by someone at any time. If you want to help me, you can do one thing for me." Writing up to this point, Li Yunxin looked at Red Lady with a smile. "How about this start?" His voice was clear and his smile was bright. It seemed that he was really writing to express his feelings. Red Lady blinked her eyes. "Although it can't be compared to the great heroes of the human world, it doesn't sound bad. What about the following?" Li Yunxin laughed. "Ah, I said these to tease Luer. I thought you would feel bad after hearing it. Since you feel bad, let me think." According to this tone, the next should be, "The demon warriors on the sea are full of spirit and fighting spirit, determined to win glory for Jun Shang." But when it fell on the paper, it was written, "I have a person in my hand that the owner of Southernwood House wants. A few days ago, I used this person to threaten the owner of Southernwood House to come to see me in person and give me an explanation. But now my plan has changed. 1, he paused and pointed at the word 1, can't ask her to come to see me, can't ask her to come to the sea." Red Lady's eyes stayed on the word she for a while. She looked up at Li Yunxin. "Hey Jun Shang, it should be our respective Jun Shang. The demons already had quite a few Juan Shang, who knew if a few more would pop up. Speaking of this, I think those female demons in the sea may want to make a contribution this time so that they can get Jun Shang's favor and be accepted by him." Li Yunxin spread his hands helplessly. How can they have so many thoughts? These fiendish demons were struggling just to stay alive. Moreover, it's not like a female demon thinks about those things. Speaking of this, he quickly closed his mouth. He blinked and pretended to bow to her to show that he had said something wrong. "Well, I'll add each. Other than this, how about the rest?" Red Lady slightly pouted and bit her red lips. She said reluctantly, "Not bad." Li Yunxin heaved a sigh of relief. "Ah, it's good that it's not bad. Then the next is," he wrote as he said, "it's about my life." He looked at Red Lady seriously. "Thank you for your kindness." Red Lady stared at the word Qing for a while. She suddenly blushed. She looked at Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin was stunned. He suddenly realized something. Even though he had lived in this world for a long time, he had lived in the previous world for even longer. His way of thinking still had some traces of the previous world. In that world, when the word Qing was mentioned, the first impression was, "Dear Qing, please rise," or "Dear Qing, please rise." Then there were names with the word Qing. Things like Changqing, Xiaoqing, and so on. He wrote this word as friend, but it could also be used as a form of respect. calling each other this way would make their relationship seem closer. Only then did he remember that in the secular world of this world, there was another widely used meaning, husband and wife addressing each other. The so-called whispering to each other came from this. But who asked Li Chunfeng and Shang Guanyu to never use this word before? Li Chunfeng called Shang Guanyu Aiyue, and Shang Guanyu called Li Chunfeng Xiaoguan. It was even more mushy than the word qing. He was about to speak when Red Lady suddenly flew up. After all, you're talking about yourself. It turns out I'm not involved at all. Take your time to write it. I want to see which reckless person dares to claim to have eaten my father's flesh. After saying this, she ignored Li Yunxin and went straight to the west. Li Yunxin raised his hand. He didn't know what to say. He simply didn't say anything. He looked at the piece of paper on the table again. He raised his hand and was about to throw it into the sea. But at this moment, the water under the immovable cube surged. A human figure separated from the blood water. Li Yunxin fished the paper back and held it in his hand. He summoned the true fire in his palm and instantly burned it to ashes. The person who emerged from the water was none other than Lord Donghai. It seemed that because his previous incarnation was sealed by Li Yunxin, this time it was his real body. Red Lady had just left and he appeared right after her. Perhaps he had been hiding under the water for a long time. Li Yunxin watched him slowly rise and stop in the air. He raised his eyebrows. Lord Donghai, have you been here since the beginning and watched me slaughter your Sea clan, or have you arrived immediately after receiving the news? But Lord Donghai only stared at him, looking him up and down. His expression was not very good. When he first met Li Yunxin on the Taowu, he carefully looked at him. However, the strength that Li Yunxin displayed at that time was beyond his expectations. Thus, when the two of them met in the water prison for the second time, he carefully sized up Li Yunxin as if to re-evaluate her. But now, Li Yunxin's strength had exceeded his previous evaluation. He had to re-evaluate this guy in front of him. In fact, it was the former. He had arrived long ago. How could he not know that more than 10,000 Sea clan soldiers had come to his East Sea? So he came to see for himself. When he saw General Shifeng leading the army to surround Li Yunxin and Red Lady, he decided to watch from the sidelines. He might not know how things would develop in the end, but at least he knew that it was not a bad thing to make the arrogant Wei River Dragon King suffer a setback. Who knew that what he saw was a bloody massacre? It was not the Sea clan against the two mainlanders, but the Dragon King against the Sea clan. This Li Yunxin was really terrifying. Indeed, he had to completely put away any contempt in his heart. Lord Donghai frowned slightly, looked at General Shifeng who was sealed in the motionless square statue, and then looked at Li Yunxin. Does what Lord Wei River said in the prison still count? Li Yunxin smiled coldly. Have you thought it through? First you asked such a guy with low EQ to invite us. Then we hid in the water and watched those insolent creatures clamor at us. Now that you found out that your plan has failed, you came out to ask me if it still counts? Lord Donghai, you want to take all the good things for yourself. To tell you the truth, I have seen Shinryu a few days ago. I told him the conversation between you and me in the water prison. Now the Divine Lord knows very well what you are thinking. Take a guess, does what I said a few days ago still count? Lord Donghai's eyes widened. But he was not shocked. He was not a stupid person. He knew that although what Li Yunxin said was scary, since it was said to him, there must be room for negotiation. Seeing him like this, Li Yunxin sneered and turned around. He took out a piece of magic paper from his sleeve and spread it on the table, writing something. I was in a good mood, he said as he wrote, but when I saw you it was all gone. She glanced at him again and said, don't you like to be hesitant and wavering? Now there are only two ways in front of you. One is to continue to be your good son, good Dragon King. Let's see if Lord Donghai will believe me or you, and see if it will make you die faster. The second way is what I said to you in the water prison. But this time once you agree you can't get off the boat. I can tell Lord Donghai that I have scared you, and said that I will use you to get rid of the remaining 7 Dragon King, and then get rid of you. Then when the time comes, if my guess is right and the Rock King has really appeared, I will tell her the news. If I guess wrong and he is still in the water prison, I have a way to get him out, then I can protect you and turn the tables on her. Now both ways are here. I don't care which way you go. You choose which way to go. When he said these words, his face was cold. He scolded this Donghai Dragon King as if he was scolding his son. But after saying the last 2 sentences, he paused and suddenly laughed as if he thought of something funny. So he repeated to himself, you choose how you want to go. He seemed to be quite proud of these 2 sentences. In the eyes of Lord Donghai, his reaction was another evidence that, This man is very scheming, unpredictable and unpredictable. After saying these words, Li Yunxin raised his hand and the magic paper on the table flew to Lord Donghai. But no matter which way you choose, give this to Lady Mingyue. He put down the pen and turned to look at Lord Donghai. What I said to the Sea clan before may have been to scare them. But there is one way that is not. You touched someone you shouldn't touch. If you dare to disrespect her, there will be a second tomb next to the one under my feet. Lord Donghai reached out and took the magic paper. He glanced at it and saw only 3 words written on it. Do you know? He was stunned, not knowing what these 3 words meant. But when he heard what Li Yunxin said next, he frowned and said in a low voice, "Why would I disrespect her? I adore her." Li Yunxin turned around. "Get out of here. If I see you or hear this kind of bullshit again before you think about it, you will be skinned and pulled out." The face of the Donghai Dragon King suddenly turned translucent with a very strange blue color. A terrible momentum emanated from his body, and his anger could be felt even from 10 meters away. But Li Yunxin ignored him and turned his back to him, seemingly unguarded. The Dragon King glared at him angrily for more than 10 breaths before he abruptly retracted his aura and dived back into the sea with a boom. Chapter 650. An hour later, the entire Penglai Island felt the wrath of the Dragon King of the East Sea. The sky above the island was covered with dark clouds, as if the night had come early. Thunder exploded one after another, as if the master of the East Sea was roaring. In fact, he was indeed roaring, in the courtyard where Huang Guanzi, who claimed to be the messenger of the Freemasonry, was. That's how he talks to me. Lord Donghai waved the magic paper in his hand, his hair loose and his clothes open. It seemed that this was the only way to vent the anger in his heart and not let it burn him. 1,000 years. Who dares to talk to me like this? How dare you? Madame Mingyue is still in my hands. I'm so angry. Huang Guanzi put his hands in his sleeves and sat upright on the stone bench. He used his magical power to protect the area 3 feet around him, so that it would not end up like other places. The blue bricks covering the ground had already been shaken into powder. The bamboo trees in the courtyard were also turned into ashes. The bamboo house behind him was also destroyed, and only 3 or 4 of the magic instruments he brought were spared. The courtyard seemed to have gone through a fire and there were embers everywhere. He was silent, because he knew that no words could ease the current Dragon King of the East Sea. In front of the power of the East Sea Dragon King, the emperors in the secular world were just like princes. But such a figure was severely reprimanded, and after being told to get out, he really left obediently. This great demon of the mysterious realm could be considered to have restrained his reaction after such a thing happened. He only destroyed the courtyard and not the whole island, which really deserved the reputation of forbearance and silence. Huang Guanzi's eyes were not on Lord Donghai, but on the paper in his hand. Lord Donghai only said that Li Yunxin asked him to give this paper to Madame Mingyue, but he never said what was written. But it didn't matter, he had seen clearly, it was written. Do you know? Since he had seen it, he would let Lord Donghai rage for a while. Then he reached out and carefully stroked his beard. Lord, now that it has come to this, we can't hesitate anymore. Let's do as Li Yunxin said. Lord Donghai stopped abruptly and turned to look at him with a pale face. The flames around him were still surging, as if he had just walked out of a sea of fire. His eyes widened, and his originally handsome face was slightly out of shape. Do as he says. What are you doing? Get lost? Huang Guanzi was not afraid of his terrifying appearance. Instead, he patiently and seriously said, I told ruler about Li Yunxin's abilities in the past and told ruler to be careful. Lord Donghai frowned. Are you blaming me? Are you blaming me for being careless? Huang Guanzi waved his hand. Now that things have come to this, does it matter who is right and who is wrong? It's just that after going through all these things, Juanshang should know that it's me who said too little, and Juanshang who looked down on me, but there really isn't any reason why he, Li Yunxin, is incompetent. A few days ago, Juanshang came back and told me about this matter. I told him to listen to him for now, cooperate with him and then kill him. But, there is no other meaning, Juanshang said to wait a few days to think about it. As a result, in just a few days he killed many big demons on the sea and added a helper. I mentioned this helper to Juanshang before. But I didn't expect that he really had the guts to come to the sea. Mentioned it? Lord Donghai said with hatred. But he didn't say anything else. The flames around him slowly subsided, so the dark clouds in the sky slowly dispersed, and the lightning also slowly dissipated. As usual, the anger of the Dragon King of Donghai came and went quickly. The ashes in the air slowly fell, accumulating a thin layer on his shoulders. Huang Guanzi also softened his tone a little. Now I will tell Jun Shang in detail. This red lady is the daughter of Lord Dongting in Dongting Lake of Qing Kingdom in Zhonglu. She is the princess of Dongting. In Dongting, half of the dragon soul was sealed. This dragon soul was used as the array eye to suppress the sealed supreme golden rock. Before Lord Dongting came to the sea, he refined the other half of the dragon soul into Red Lady's body. She also had all kinds of adventures in Yunshan, and her soul merged with the dragon soul, gaining great power. As for how strong this power is, Jun Shang, you should know that after Shinryu transformed half of the dragon soul, he used the other half to transform the dragon sun on the land. The rest is today's Shinryu. Huang Guanzi carefully looked at Lord Donghai's face. It is difficult to deal with Li Yunxin with such a helper. In the past he was alone and we could think of other ways. But now, Jun Shang, let's agree with him. With his power we can do our own things. After everything is done we can think about what to do next. You can be angry again, but after calming down, it is time to do something. Lord Donghai glared at Huang Guanzi. After a while he raised the magic paper in his hand. What about this? What does it mean? Li Yunxin's father is a member of Munanju. After he was born, his father has been carrying out the mission of Munanju, and kept him as a hostage. His mother, Lady Mingyue, although she knows some of the details, she should not know that she kept him as a hostage. In my opinion, these 3 words are asking if Lady Mingyue knows about that matter. Jun Shang previously said. The anger on Lord Donghai's face slowly dissipated. He gradually relaxed his brows, took the paper in front of him and read it again, then sighed. So it is like this? When Lady Mingyue came here, she said she wanted to see Shinryu for her son. It should be like this. Alas, it seems that Shinryu and Li Yunxin. Huang Guanzi looked at Lord Donghai. His eyes suddenly flashed and he said calmly, Jun Shang, don't you know the secret of Dragon Island? Lord Donghai frowned. Secret. At this time, since Lord Donghai had restrained his anger, Huang Guanzi removed the restriction around him. He stood up and bowed his head slightly. He paced a few steps thoughtfully, then said, I have something. I didn't tell you before because I thought it was useless to say more, and it might cause you unnecessary trouble. But now that Li Yunxin is involved, I have to ask you if you want to hear it. Lord Donghai was anxious. Sir, why didn't you tell me the secret earlier? Tell me. Huang Guanzi stopped and looked at him. Do you know about the astral world and the netherworld? Lord Donghai was stunned. The astral world is the residence of the celestials. The netherworld? Which netherworld are you referring to? The underworld and the netherworld could both be called the netherworld. This word had many meanings, but Lord Donghai realized that Huang Guanzi must be referring to one of them. Sure enough, Huang Guanzi's face was solemn. He said in a low voice, You must have heard that Black Bai Yanjun is a celestial from the astral world. He made a big mistake and was sent to the human world to be the god of the underworld. The celestials live in the astral world. Corresponding to it, there is the netherworld. The condemned god is sent to the netherworld, where he is tortured. The ruler of the astral world is the celestial man, and the ruler of the netherworld is the Mother Earth of the netherworld. The Mother Earth of the netherworld is a god since ancient times, and has an irreconcilable feud with the celestials from the astral world. The celestials who committed crimes are sent there to fight with the Mother Earth of the netherworld. Only by killing the Mother Earth can they return to the astral world. Huang Guanzi paused. The entrance to the netherworld is on the Dragon Island. The Shinryu guards the entrance. Lord Donghai's face slowly showed a suspicious expression. He looked at Huang Guanzi. Why have I never heard of this? Huang Guanzi said calmly, Not only have you never heard of it, but few people in the world have heard of it. If you don't believe me, you can listen to what I have to say. Do you know, why did I come here other than for that Li Yunxin? Lord Donghai frowned again. Sir, you have too many secrets and goals. Huang Guanzi smiled. Don't you also have secrets? You and I have been together for so long, we don't need to be honest, but it is enough as long as we benefit each other. Other than Li Yunxin, I am also here for the entrance to the netherworld. The former elders of the Freemasonry are on Cloud Mountain. It is said that they are all reincarnations of celestials. But during the Battle of Cloud Mountain they actually abandoned us. When the cultivators of the Taoist sect were fighting against the allied forces of the demons and monsters, a rain of fire suddenly fell from the sky. Many people said that it was a method that Li Yunxin used to draw the qi of the earth from the mother and child instrument. But I know that was the method of the elders. In order to achieve their goals, they didn't care about our lives. When Huang Guanzi said this, he laughed coldly. It was as if he was reminiscing about the past. It turns out that after working hard for so many years, we are just pawns that can be abandoned at any time. Helping each other, helping each other, helping each other in the same boat. In the end, it is all a lie. Then don't blame us for boarding another ship. Lord Donghai had always been interested in Huang Guanzi's background. It could also be said that he was very interested in the Freemasonry. But Huang Guanzi was usually very tight-lipped and wouldn't easily reveal anything. But now that he had said so much, it finally made him excited. He asked curiously, "Another ship? Like this one in the East Sea?" Huang Guanzi smiled. "I don't mean to be disrespectful, but this ship in the East Sea is not big enough. We also want to kill a god." Lord Donghai frowned in confusion. But soon he relaxed and his eyes widened. "You mean, if the elders are really reincarnations of celestials, they come from the star realm? Mortals regard the celestials of the star realm as gods, but now we know that they can also be afraid and also use some tricks. Then it is not impossible for us to obtain their power. The Taoist sect has cultivated for tens of thousands of years, and there are only a few hundred saints who have succeeded and ascended. But if we can find a way to go to the star realm, maybe we don't need to cultivate anymore." Lord Donghai interrupted him. "I know. You don't know where the entrance to the star realm is, but you know where the entrance to the netherworld is. So you want to go to the netherworld and find those celestials who have been demoted. Get some information from them and then use it for your own use." He shook his head as if what Huang Guanzi said had made him forget his anger just now. "But how do you know that you have a way to deal with the gods in the netherworld? If what you said is true, and there are so many nether mother in the netherworld that even the celestials can't deal with. Sir, you don't know what it is like in the netherworld. What if it is all light and flame and the endless void?" Huang Guanzi smiled slightly. "It is because we don't know that we have to try. Now is the first step. I want to assist Lord Donghai to become the only dragon king on the sea, so we can get close to the entrance to the netherworld. Once we succeed and get the power of the gods in the netherworld, we can not only take revenge on the elders of Yunshan, but also share this power with you. But the premise of all this is, you have to save your life and achieve great things." He stood up and solemnly cupped his hands to Lord Donghai. "Lord, make a decision. Don't lose a lot of things in the future because of a moment of impulse." Lord Donghai was silent for a while and sighed. "Alas. A few days ago I even had the idea of sparing Li Yunxin's life. But now, I can promise you. But after the deed is done, Li Yunxin must die. He must pay for what he did today." Huang Guanzi nodded. "These are small matters." Lord Donghai glanced at the letter in his hand again. This is your private matter." Huang Guanzi laughed. "I don't have a family, how can I give advice?" The great demon sighed. "Alas. You people are so heartless." Lord Donghai left the courtyard where Huang Guanzi was and went to Lady Mingyue's residence. He thought about it along the way, but he couldn't decide whether to show her the thin magic paper or not. But finally, when he walked on the long rainbow bridge, he made a decision. He stopped at the bridge and didn't set foot on the island. With a little force in his hand, the magic paper flew up like a bird and went straight into the depths of the dense forest. He didn't leave but used his supernatural power and waited quietly. About a quarter of an hour later he heard crying. Even if he tried to suppress it, he couldn't hide it from the great demon of the mysterious realm. He frowned uneasily. After hesitating again and again, he wanted to go into the dense forest. But at this moment he suddenly heard someone shouting on the other side of the bridge. He turned around and looked. It was the junior colonel outside his hall. "My lord." The junior colonel lowered his voice and shouted from afar, "Someone claims to be the messenger of the Freemasonry and asks to see my lord." Lord Donghai was stunned. Then he walked across the long bridge in 4 steps and came to the junior colonel. "What?" The junior colonel glanced to the north. "I'm also puzzled. The day before yesterday he went to Aquarius Bay to bring people back to the island. This time he brought more than 30 people. Just now, when this group of people entered the island, someone was so bold that he ran to me and said he was the messenger of the Freemasonry and asked to see my lord. I know that there is a Freemasonry messenger in the north of our island, so I hurried to report to my lord." Lord Donghai slowly frowned. After thinking for a while, he said, "Bring him to see me." Lord Donghai met this messenger in the south. There was a dock in the south. The mortals who had been sent to the island disembarked here and temporarily took shelter here. So the shelter was slowly built. At first it was a few low shacks and then it became a small street. As more and more people passed, the small street became a main street and finally it became a small town today. After many years, there were several generations and thousands of people in the town. When Lord Donghai was in a good mood, he would turn into a mortal and walk in this town. When he and the junior colonel met the messenger in a big house in the town, the first thing this fat man said was, "I'm Wuxia Song. I'm a messenger from the Freemasonry. I came to see my lord to save your life." Chapter 651. Because of this sentence, the East Sea King Dragon and the junior colonel looked at each other. Then they laughed together. Like the relatively approachable dignitaries in the secular world, the East Sea King often heard similar words. For example, "I am ordered by the gods to help you. East Sea King is in great danger, don't you know it?" He had heard the phrase "to save Lord Donghai's life" 3 or 4 times. Of course, the sea monsters were interested in the people and things on the land, so they learned these words from the land. Maybe some people from the land accidentally wandered into the demon's lair and spoke in such a tone because of a word. Most of them should die after saying it, and only a few survived. Because of something called survivor bias, this kind of tone was very effective. Wu Jiasong, who said this, was standing in a big room with the same layout as the inn on the land. His clothes were half wet. The sea monsters used boats to transport people, but they could only ensure that these people would not drown. The boat moved as fast as the wind. When it reached the south pier, the hull was half full of water. No matter how much he cherished his demeanor, there was no way he could dry himself. This made him look a little embarrassed. If he was a handsome man with fluttering sleeves and muttering to himself with his hands behind his back, he might be able to fool the Lord of Donghai for a while. The demon master and servant laughed, but Wu Jiasong calmly kept a straight face. He waited quietly for the two to stop laughing, and then cupped his hands. "These days, my lord must have suffered a lot in the hands of Li Yunxin. Do you know that although Li Yunxin is difficult to deal with, there is someone more difficult to deal with coming to the East Sea?" The East Sea King stopped laughing. The junior colonel laughed again, but when he saw his lord's expression, he quickly closed his mouth. "You know Li Yunxin?" The big demon looked at him seriously. "Who are you?" "I am an emissary of the Freemasons. But I already have an emissary of the Freemasons here. He also said what you said to me now." The East Sea King frowned. "Don't you know each other?" Wu Jiasong thought for a moment and said with a sullen face, "My lord, I only sent me to the East Sea, no one else." "Who is the person beside Jun Shang?" Lord Donghai looked at him with interest. "Since you call yourself an emissary, why don't you take a guess?" Wu Jiasong calmly said, "I'm afraid that person isn't who he claims to be. Ruler, why don't you say his name? I can immediately give you an answer." But Lord Donghai shook his head and leaned back in his chair. "Why don't you tell me who the other person you mentioned is more difficult to deal with? Let me see if it's different from what he said, then I'll think about whether I should believe you or not." Wu Jiasong flatly refused. "I can tell Lord Donghai." But Lord Donghai might tell this to the impostor. If he finds out about this, it will be troublesome. Lord Donghai sneered, "That person doesn't have as many concerns as you do. You're talking about a woman whose cultivation base is extremely close to the Grand Supreme level, right? She's already come to the East Sea. Your news is already too late. If you tell me your identity now, I can leave your corpse intact." He stood up as if he was no longer interested in talking to him. He said to the colonel, "You stay and interrogate him. Just leave his soul." The big demon turned around and was about to leave. The colonel got the order and looked at Wu Jiasong fiercely. A trace of panic finally appeared on the face of the man who claimed to be an emissary, but he seemed to be confident that he still had other means. He slowly took a step back and said before the colonel grabbed his arm, "I'm not talking about Red Lady. You're talking about the Princess of Dongting, aren't you? There is another person in the world who is more difficult to deal with than her." But Lord Donghai didn't stop. "Now I've changed my mind. I don't want to keep the soul of such a bluffing person." After saying this, he walked out of the door. The colonel grabbed Wu Jiasong's arm. Wu Jiasong shook it off and shouted, "It's the reincarnation of the painting saint of Xianmen, my sworn enemy and the owner of Munanju." Lord Donghai stopped and turned around. The colonel also let go of his hand. "If you said that earlier, you wouldn't have to suffer." The big demon walked back into the room. The colonel just grabbed him hard. Wu Jiasong's clothes were torn apart, and a large piece of flesh on his arm was torn. He gasped and realized that this Lord Donghai was not as stupid as he looked just now. Now you have a chance to tell me the whole story." Lord Donghai returned to the room and sat down. He put on a solemn expression. "But don't play tricks. I've heard enough of those words. This was a very old-fashioned trick. Even in the secular government, it might not be able to fool those experienced gangsters. However, now that it was used by Lord Donghai, Wu Jiasong was tricked. It was not that he didn't know this trick. He didn't expect that the Dragon King of Donghai would use such a trick on a person like him. But things had come to this. He looked at the colonel and then at Lord Donghai. He had to clench his teeth and point a few times on his arm to stop the bleeding. Then he said, "If you want to listen carefully, I'll tell you in detail first. Lord Donghai, do you know Munanju? If you ask me if I know anything again, you won't have a chance to live." Lord Donghai frowned. "Only I ask you, not you. Do you understand? Do you understand?" The colonel shouted even louder. Wu Jiasong frowned and had to sigh. "Yes." To answer Lord Donghai. "I was a member of the Freemasonry, lurking in Munanju. A few days ago I learned that Li Yunxin was coming to the East Sea by ship, so I followed him. Another woman of the Freemasonry came with me. She didn't know my identity. However, she had carelessly revealed a flaw in front of Li Yunxin and was discovered. In order to prevent her from divulging more information, I had to reveal my identity as the shopkeeper of Munanju and kill her. At least I could fool Li Yunxin. Then Li Yunxin asked me to go back to Munanju to report. He said that the important person we want is in his hands. If we want to get him back, we must ask my master to see him in person." Wu Jiasong paused here. I didn't understand his meaning at first. But after knowing some things these days, I realized that asking the master of Munanju to see him was a lie, and asking for help was the truth. He wants to challenge the authority of the Dragon King on the sea, so he naturally needs a strong helper. The master of Munanju is unfathomable. Once he makes a move, few people in the world can stop him. Now that I know that Hong Yangzi is also here, I am even more convinced of my speculation. Lord Donghai, Li Yunxin has a big plan. Only by cooperating with us can we turn the tide. The Dragon King of the East Sea looked at the colonel beside him, then at Wu Jiasong. "So, you mean that Li Yunxin asked you to go back and find the master of Munanju? But you come to me at once. Why? What do you want?" Wu Jiasong frowned and said, "Li Yunxin is our old enemy. Although I don't know what he wants, we can't let him get what he wants. Not to mention that the master of Munanju is involved." Lord Donghai raised his hand. "Okay. I got it." He turned to the junior colonel standing beside him and said, "This guy can't explain anything. He just wants to save my life." Mr. Huang Guanzi, on the other hand, explained everything clearly. He even said that Mr. Huang Guanzi is a spy. "Aha, preposterous, preposterous." Wu Jiasong shouted, "My lord, that person must be a spy of Munanju, if he gives me another." But Lord Donghai had already stood up for the second time and looked at him coldly. "Half a month ago Mr. Huang Guanzi told me that there must be a spy of Munanju who claimed to be a Freemasonry envoy. If I said that I already have one here, he would definitely confuse me. He even gave me a way to tell the truth with one try. Now humph, let's see if you are the real deal." After saying this, he suddenly turned over his palm. He threw a shiny object to Wu Jiasong and shouted, "Tell me, what is this?" Wu Jiasong caught it subconsciously and took a look. It looked like a ball of tangled hemp rope. But as soon as he touched it, he knew that it was not fabric, but iron. It was as thin as paper and only as thick as coarse cotton thread. It was tangled together and turned into a ball of this kind of iron wire. This thing didn't look special. But Wu Jiasong really couldn't figure out how it was made. If a skilled craftsman had carefully hammered the iron sheet to such thickness and then cut it into threads, how could it be cut so evenly and neatly, and how could it be tangled together like this? While he was hesitating, Lord Donghai sneered, "This thing is called a steel wire ball. Do you recognize it? When a Freemasonry envoy goes out on a mission, he must bring something inconspicuous, but it is difficult for the craftsmen in the world to imitate. Since you don't know this thing, what about yours?" Wu Jiasong was stunned and said hurriedly, I came out in a hurry and I pretended to be Munanju, humph." Lord Donghai sneered again and turned to leave. The colonel grabbed Wu Jiasong's arm and said, "Let's go. Go to jail." Wu Jiasong couldn't struggle. Although his kung fu was high, it was only kung fu. The little demon was a demon with cultivation, and it was easy to subdue him. How could Wu Jiasong break free? An hour later, Lord Donghai reappeared in the courtyard where Huang Guanzi was. Previously, he had destroyed this courtyard, but in such a short period of time, everything had been restored to its original state. Lord Donghai wasn't surprised by all this, as if he was used to it. When he arrived at the courtyard, Huang Guanzi wasn't there. Lord Donghai waited for a while but didn't enter the house to see. The bamboo house in the courtyard could be seen at a glance, and there were no secrets. And with his identity as Lord Donghai, he wouldn't do something like that in private. After waiting for about a quarter of an hour, Huang Guanzi came back. He held 2 or 3 wildflowers in his hand. The stems were slender and the leaves were lush. The flowers were elegant and small, dotting the branches. It didn't look like the green leaves matched the flowers, but the flowers matched the green leaves. In the other hand he held 3 fish. Each fish was only the size of a palm, slender, long, scaleless, and extremely small, as if they were born to be eaten by humans. He was originally ugly and wretched. But now he walked in through the bamboo door like this, and there was something indifferent about him. Lord Donghai was a little impatient, and when he heard the footsteps he turned around and was about to speak, but when he saw him like this he was stunned. Huang Guanzi was also stunned. Then he looked at the fish in his hand and said embarrassedly, "This?" Lord Donghai glanced at the fish in his hand and raised his eyebrows. "Ha! I thought you liked to eat vegetarian. It turns out that you also like to eat fish. It's no big deal. Don't demons on the land eat delicacies from the mountains? When people are hungry they will eat people. We demons in the sea don't eat seafood, so what do we eat?" Speaking of this he smiled. "It's still thin scales." I used to." But then he realized that he had said something wrong, so he smiled and changed the topic. "Sir, do as you please. I just came to ask you something. I want to see how you people on the land take care of this while I ask." Huang Guanzi came in with the fish and flowers, frowning slightly. "What happened?" Lord Donghai sat down on the stone bench and smiled. "No hurry, no hurry. Sir, please go ahead." Huang Guanzi looked at him and thought for a while. Okay. There were stone tables and benches in the courtyard, and on the west side, there was a fire pit built with large pebbles. The 3 fish had been cut open and washed, so he first separated the fish on the stone and put the flowers on the windowsill of the bamboo house. Then he walked to the side of the grass, made a stroke in the air with his hand, and drew out a pool of water. He washed his hands in the pool of water and took a bamboo tube from the windowsill. This bamboo tube was wide at the bottom and narrow at the top, and it was open like a vase, and it was indeed used as a vase. He scooped some water from the pool, put it back on the windowsill and put the 3 flowers in. Then he smiled at Lord Donghai and waved his hand. The water in the air fell to the ground noisily. But the grass on the ground caught it and it did not splash everywhere. Then he reached out and touched the fire pit and pulled. A vigorous rootless fire rose with a whoosh, and it was no different from a bonfire made by mortals. This courtyard was surrounded by thin bamboos. The bamboo leaves were more slender than those on the land, and there were light green spots on them, as if the mottled moonlight fell on them at night. For some reason it was called Su Zhu. Now many thin branches had reached over the fence, and Huang Guanzi reached out and broke off a few bamboo branches. He pierced 3 fish with 3 bamboo branches and hung them over the fire to roast. He did this without saying a word, as if he had forgotten that Lord Donghai was present. It seemed that he was just looking for wild game because he was greedy for it. Lord Donghai did not rush him and just watched quietly. There were 2 people in the courtyard, a vase of flowers, a fire and 3 fish. It was like a simple friendship between gentlemen. A quarter of an hour passed. The fish skin was slightly yellow, and the faint fishy smell turned into a strong aroma. Huang Guanzi reached out and scratched the fish. Fine salt fell from the air, adding flavor to the delicacy. After that he turned to Lord Donghai. "Lord, what do you want to say?" Lord Donghai let out an ah. It was as if he was fascinated by watching him roast fish. At this time he shook his head slightly, smiled and stared at Huang Guanzi saying, "Sir, you really have some good cooking skills." "Oh, I'm just curious. It is said that the owner of Southwood Jew is the reincarnation of the art saint. Is the supernatural power you used just now also a skill of the art Tao?" Chapter 652. Hearing this, Huang Guanzi was not in a hurry to answer. He smiled, took a roasted fish and handed it to Lord Donghai, but did not let go. Lord Donghai reached out to take it. With just a glance, he tore off a piece of fish with his teeth. After chewing for a while, he swallowed. "I've said it before. It's nothing. There are no taboos like other places." After tasting it again, he frowned slightly. "Good taste. You only use salt to taste it?" Huang Guanzi twirled his beard. "It's all about the heat. The fish is tender, and the meat with fine scales is even more tender. This kind of ingredient is fresh and tender. Ordinary methods may waste natural resources, so I use the true fire of the painting path to cook it. The rootless fire of the painting path is not like ordinary firewood. Although there is no special aroma, it does not affect the natural fragrance of the fish. It is 3 times hotter than ordinary fire. Once the fish comes into contact with the fire, the skin will be charred first. The juice at the bottom will be locked into the meat, unable to escape. Turn to a gentle fire, roast the fish inside to medium well, and sprinkle salt to prevent the water from coming out. When eating, there will be both the charred outside and the tender inside, naturally delicious. Saying this, he also took a tail and ate it. Tasting it carefully, he said, "Lord is right. This is the method of the painting path." Since Lord asked this, I guess, today the people from Southernwood House will arrive. Lord Donghai twirled the bamboo branch and looked at him. Yes. But he did not say anything else. Huang Guanzi smiled again, as I expected. With so many things happening in the Eastern Sea, how could Southernwood House, which has always been competing with us, not make a move? Let me guess, the owner of Southernwood House is about to arrive, right? Lord Donghai tore the fish with his hands, piece by piece, steaming hot. Hearing this, he grunted again. What do you think, teacher? In my opinion, Lord probably does not believe that person's words. But he is still somewhat unhappy, so he came here to find peace of mind. Huang Guanzi laughed. Then I will give Lord peace of mind. The person should be using Southernwood House's owner as a bargaining chip. He claimed that if Jun Shang cooperated with him, he would not spread the news. But in fact, no matter what, this news will be released, if he is really from Southernwood House and is pretending to be our emissary. Lord, don't kill him for now. Tonight, I will confront him personally. Do you still want it? Lord Donghai froze for a moment and realized that he was asking about the fish. The fish was small, and the great demon only picked the tender meat to eat. In the time it took for Huang Guanzi to say these few words, he had unknowingly finished eating both sides of the plump side. Only then did he let out an "ah," and waved his hand to decline. "Sir, please use it." He stood up again. "Since that's the case, I won't disturb Mister's interest any longer. See you tonight." Huang Guanzi did not get up. He only nodded slightly. Thus, the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea left, and the courtyard returned to silence. The rootless fire burned faintly. Huang Guanzi slowly ate the one in his hand. He ate very carefully, not letting go of a single bit of tender meat. After eating one, he seemed to want more, but he didn't eat any more. He took the remaining one from the fire, poked it with his finger, popped a hole in the fire pit, and threw the fish into it. Then he took the one that Lord Donghai left on the table, threw it into the hole, and buried it. After doing all this, he stood up and walked to the bamboo fence of the courtyard with his hands behind his back. By this time the sky was getting dark. From this fence, one could see the sea through the sparse thin bamboo. The sky above the sea appeared a dim yellow, and the sunset was burning brightly. He looked for a while and sighed softly. Sigh. When the sunset was also burned out and the bright moon appeared on the horizon, Huang Guanzi turned around. He began to walk in the courtyard, and each step was of different priority. It looked like the steps of you of the Xianmen, but inside it was completely different. The cultivators of the Xianmen could not see the trick in it, and the demons could not see it either. But those who knew about painting should be able to see some clues. He was painting with steps. It was just like what Li Yunxin did when she first saw the caravan of the Chao escort agency and was captured by the swordsman in the forest. She performed her painting skills in a very secretive way in order to obtain some kind of magical power. This went on for a quarter of an hour. Huang Guanzi stopped. He stood still for a while, then said as if he was talking to himself, "She's here." A while later, "It won't be long. Lord Donghai doesn't look smart, but he's actually very cautious. I look like I can see everything here, but there are actually a lot of restrictions. I'm taking a risk now." So he was talking to someone. Her purpose in coming to the East Sea is unknown, but she should be here to help Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin. He stopped and listened for a while. His purpose is also unknown, but from what happened in the past, he probably just wants to live. The situation forced him to go against the current. At first, he wanted to look for Shinryu as a backer, but he found out that this backer is unreliable, and now he's planning to save himself. He doesn't care about our matter. What did the other side say? It seemed like they said a lot. But Huang Guanzi's face was as calm as still water. He listened and said, "He can be used." "Yes. I'm thinking about it now and I'm doing it too." Chum. It should be a coincidence. These days he and I are doing the same thing. For the past year I've been trying to provoke Lord Donghai and the other dragon son to fight. But he always hesitated. Now that Li Yunxin is here, we can be considered to be combining strength and softness. He's not as polite to Lord Donghai as I am, and now this water demon is almost obedient to me. The other side spoke. It didn't say much, probably only 3 or 4 sentences. Huang Guanzi's face finally showed some expression and he frowned slightly. Is this appropriate? He's not a quiet person. If he survives this time and grows stronger, I'm afraid no one will be able to control him anymore. After a while, he sighed helplessly. There's something that I shouldn't have said. But, don't bite off more than you can chew. This time the other side spoke even less, only 1 sentence. Huang Guanzi shook his head and turned around. With his hands behind his back, he wiped the ground with his feet as if to erase some traces, and also as if he was thinking about something while wiping. Then he sat on the stone bench in the courtyard, closed his eyes and breathed in and out. Cultivator's breaths were extremely long. His cultivation should be considered profound, so it was even longer. 1 breath for nearly a quarter of an hour. After 10 breaths, footsteps came from outside the courtyard. Huang Guanzi opened his eyes and saw the officer next to Lord Donghai holding a white paper lantern, squinting at him and smiling. Sir. His Majesty ordered that you should interrogate the spy caught in the afternoon. This general will accompany you. Huang Guanzi opened his eyes and a light flashed. Ah, this general? The officer laughed. His Majesty said that when the sea surface is pacified, he will call me General Fubo. Huang Guanzi also laughed. What else did His Majesty say? The officer made a gesture of invitation. Only the matter at hand. Sir, that spy is bold. He dared to say that Sir is a fake. TSK. I think he is just a mortal. How dare he claim to be an emissary of the Freemasonry? As he rambled on, he guided Huang Guanzi away. When the two met Wu Jiasong, who claimed to be an emissary of the Freemasonry, the latter had changed beyond recognition. He should have been tortured. There were no wounds on his body and there was no blood. However, his skin had turned blue and purple like a ripe plum. His skin was swollen as if juice or pus could flow out if a needle was poked. His skin was swollen as if juice or pus could flow out with a needle. Except for the stairs extending down from the wall on the side of the entrance, it was all seawater. Half of Wu Jiasong's body was soaked in seawater, like a pickled radish. The officer lifted the lantern, shone it at the entrance and said proudly, "The thief boasted shamelessly, I have taught him a lesson on behalf of Sir. Now Sir can ask, I will hold the line for Sir." In the afternoon, Huang Guanzi told Lord Donghai that the two of them could confront each other. It seemed that the two of them were really called to confront, now. The officer claimed that he had already taught Huang Guanzi a lesson, and was afraid that he had tortured Huang Guanzi to interrogate him. But this kind of thing was also expected, so Huang Guanzi did not take it to heart. He nodded slightly and walked down the wet stone steps to see Wu Jiasong. This visitor who claimed to be an emissary must not have expected that he would end up like this. It had only been 6 hours since he arrived on the island. Not only did he not become a guest of honor, but he was also locked in the water dungeon. How could a mortal withstand the torture methods of a demon? If it were not for the fact that there were mortals on the island before, he would have died long ago. Now his arms were hung on the wall, and his head hung down powerlessly. But the pair of eyes on his blue and purple face were bright, like 2 stars in the dark prison. Seeing Huang Guanzi walking down the stone steps, he stared at him and squeezed out a hoarse voice from his throat. "Hee hee. You are that Freemasonry emissary? You think you are the emissary of the Freemasonry?" Huang Guanzi looked at him calmly for a while and sighed. He looked up at the officer and said, "General, you are too heavy-handed. I am afraid that this person has lost his mind from the pain." After saying this, he lifted his foot and walked over. Wherever he passed, the water ripples seemed to be ironed out, becoming like the surface of a mirror. He walked 6 steps to Wu Jiasong's side and pointed at the wall. The shackles and chains were unlocked, and the man's body fell down. Huang Guanzi reached out to hold him, and then made a gesture in the void, and 2 yellow scarf warriors appeared. The 2 warriors carried a small litter. Huang Guanzi placed Wu Jiasong on it, then took a step back and sighed, "You are just a mortal. To be able to endure such methods and still call yourself the emissary of the Freemasonry, you are really unyielding. Never mind. Seeing that you have the guts, let me ask you. If you are really a member of my society but you came here on your own, because of our brotherhood in the same boat, I will definitely ensure that you leave the East Sea safely. If you are not, but someone from Southernwood House, I will also give you a quick death." As soon as he said this, Wu Jiasong forced himself to stand up and laughed coldly. "Hee hee. The method you used just now, is it painting? The people from Southernwood House call themselves the old subordinates of the painting saint. Do you think I don't know?" Huang Guanzi smiled. While leading the 2 yellow scarf warriors to follow him, he said, "Brother, If you are really a member of my society, this method can't prove your innocence. Do you know Xian Shilio? Wu Jiasong stared at him, wanting to say something but hesitating. It seemed that he knew, but he was worried that the other party was bluffing, so he kept his mouth shut. Huang Guanzi didn't care. He continued, Xian Shilio is a member of my society. If you are really the person you said, you should know. Doesn't she have any methods of painting? Since Southern Wood House calls itself the old subordinates of the painting saint, we should learn this skill. Let me ask you, since you said you are the emissary of the Freemasonry, which elder are you from? When he said this, he had already walked up the stairs. The junior colonel originally thought that he was going to interrogate him, but when he saw him bring the person out, he was at a loss for a moment. Huang Guanzi also smiled at him. Go and report to the Lord of the East Sea. Tell him that I have a way to tell the truth. Tomorrow morning, send this person to the palace in one piece and let the Lord deal with him. The junior colonel was stunned and said embarrassedly, but the Lord ordered. Huang Guanzi smiled and sighed, all right. Did Juanshang order you to watch over him closely, afraid that this person will suddenly attack and harm me? The junior colonel nodded hurriedly, yes. After saying this, he realized that it was stupid and smiled embarrassedly. But Huang Guanzi didn't care. Then follow him. This friend, I asked you which elder are you from, why don't you say anything? The two yellow scarf warriors carried Wu Jiasong as if he was walking on flat ground without any bumps. But when Wu Jiasong was being tortured in the water, he still had some strength. Now that he was on the ground, he seemed to be more comfortable, but he seemed to be weaker. After a long time, he said, don't try to get information from me. Huang Guanzi laughed again. He didn't look like he was interrogating a criminal at all. This is a good excuse. If you can't answer anything, just say that you're worried that I'm trying to get information from you and don't mention it. But have you forgotten your situation? Right now it's not you interrogating me, but I'm interrogating you. You claim to be my emissary, so you have to show me something that can convince me. My Freemasonry used to have hundreds of elders and dozens of apostles, and countless connections in the human world. A few days ago there was a big change and many connections were broken. Even if I wanted to investigate your background, it would be difficult. If you continue with this attitude, when he said this, he was already out of the water prison. He turned to look at Wu Jiasong. I can't protect you even if I wanted to. Think carefully, which elder are you from and who are you working for now? If you can't answer, you'll die in the hall tomorrow. Wu Jiasong stared at him. But this time he didn't seem angry but confused. You. He said hesitantly, are you really one of my people? Say a name. Then you'll know whether I am or not. While the two of them were talking, the junior colonel was listening on the side. He didn't rush him and he wasn't in a hurry. He seemed to have memorized every word and every expression on his face. He stared at Wu Jiasong as if he wanted to see the words coming out of his mouth. After about 3 breaths, Wu Jiasong finally gritted his teeth. Taoist Mulian. Huang Guanzi smiled. That's him. Taoist Mulian is from Bingshu Grotto Heaven. He has 3 disciples. 2 of them are members of my people and 1 doesn't know anything. I've never heard of him being involved in the secular world. Wu Jiasong widened his eyes. Taoist Mulian's first disciple, Great Immortal Fanhua, was the one who introduced me into the society. Taoist Mulian is my ancestor. Are you really one of my people? Chapter 653. Huang Guanzi turned around and continued walking. Outside the water prison was a square paved with blue stones. It shone with a cold light under the moonlight. There were patrolling armored soldiers and sparks of fire around it. From here they could see the mountains of Penglai Island in the distance. There were buildings at the top of the mountains and they were brightly lit. It was as if the mountain was a torch that illuminated half the sky. At the center, on the tallest main peak, Lord Donghai's palace was even more dazzling. It was as if it was built in the sky. Huang Guanzi pointed at the dazzling palace as he walked. He did not answer Wu Jiasong's question directly. Look at the palaces on the mountain. They are brilliant. The demons at the foot of the mountain look at them in the darkness. They can't see them clearly. They think that the person in the palace is the king, an amazing person. But from here there are differences between palaces. How can Lord Donghai's residence be compared to the guards on other mountains? When he said this, he glanced at Wu Jiasong. The lowest level of my organization are the mortals of the world. The peddlers among the mortals are the lowest of the lowest. Many people don't know who they work for, but these people are the safest. Since they don't know, at most they will be abandoned at any time. they won't die. Above these people are their leaders. For example, the leaders of gangs and small sections. These leaders know who their superiors are. But their superiors are the people of the secular world, the big families and gangs in the secular world. These great clans and gangs will also be connected to the government. At this level, they are already close to the peak of the secular organizations. Since you know Taoist Mulian, you should be at this level. But these are like the mountains in front of us. They are all in the darkness at the foot of the mountain. Above them are people like great immortal Fanhua. Cultivators are immortals in the eyes of the secular world, but they are just the lowest level of the cultivation world. They know that they work for the Freemasons and know who their superiors are. Taoist Mulian is just someone in charge of some affairs in one of the sects in the celestial sect. You will tell them important news. Usually they don't know many details. Above them are the sect leaders of the sects and the sect masters of the grotto heavens. These people knew the big and small matters of the guild, but not everyone had the right to make decisions. The decision-making power was ultimately in the hands of the two saints and a few core members. However, the important decisions they make will still be submitted to the previous elders for review. That is only in rough outline. However, there were already 8 levels. You are between the 3rd and 4th level of these 8 levels. It was like a governor of a prefecture or a province in the imperial court of the secular world. Why do you think you know the movements of the higher-ups and what the prime minister and emperor are doing? Huang Guanzi sighed in a low voice. Maybe you've been in the secular world for too long. You only feel that the higher you go, it's all hazy and blurry and your heart can't understand it. You only think that what you see is the big picture, but you don't know that your big picture is really insignificant. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a putong sound. Turning his head to look, he saw Wu Jiasong tumbling down from the palanquin. He was now swollen like a ball, but his movements were nimble. As soon as he landed on the ground, he knelt down. Are you really a member of my guild? Then you are. Huang Guanzi smiled. Just now, I said it was a rough introduction. So, before I came to the Eastern Sea, my level was slightly higher than Taoist Mulian's. I can be considered to be in the 6th level. He could actually explain the composition of the Freemasons so clearly, so naturally, it was very convincing. In addition, although his appearance was wretched, his bearing was outstanding. At this moment, Wu Jiasong seemed to have already believed 80% of it. He did not get up but still forced himself to say, "May I ask, who are you?" Huang Guanzi turned his face to the junior colonel and smiled. He pointed at the person on the ground. "Look, you have to see the real deal to believe me. When I first came to Penglai you were also like this." The junior colonel smiled apologetically. "Haha, but true gold fears no fire, sir." Huang Guanzi looked at Wu Jiasong and said in a deep voice, "I used to reside in the universal Mi Luo grotto heaven of the 18 paradises of Daotong. I was one of the 6 managing elders under the sect master, and my Taoist name was Huang Guanzi. If you were lucky enough to cultivate in the Taoist sect, you should know my name." Wu Jiasong was stunned. "I don't know. What I don't know, is there anything else?" The junior colonel seemed to be angry at this moment. He shouted sternly, "How dare you? Sir has already said so much about you, a fish and shrimp in the swamp, and you still dare to ask. Is this something you can ask?" Huang Guanzi waved his hand. "It's okay. Being bold but careful is also the style of the members of our Freemasons. Well, you naturally have no chance to know about the things in the Taoist sect. However, if you are experienced and knowledgeable, you should have heard of the things in the secular world. Let me ask you, since you are born in Donghai country, have you heard of a Taoist priest in Donghai country more than 400 years ago, whose Taoist name was Huang Guanzi? Do you know that there is a god in the secular world called the virtuous Lord of Heaven?" Wu Jiasong blinked his eyes and said hesitantly, "This? I know. When I was a child, there was a memorial tablet of the virtuous Lord at home. Huang Guanzi, the one in the era of Emperor Minhao." Speaking of this, his eyes suddenly widened. "Ah?" Huang Guanzi smiled and didn't speak. The junior colonel also smiled. Huang Guanzi was not a rare name, and could even be counted as a common name. If all the wild Taoist priests named Huang Guanzi in Midland were gathered together, they could probably form an army. However, for people in Donghai country and the surrounding areas, the first name that came to their minds was a Taoist priest who lived in the era of Emperor Minhao of Donghai country over 400 years ago. It was said that the Taoist priest was ugly but he was powerful. When he traveled around the world, he arrived in Donghai country, and a sea monster was stirring up waves and devouring passing ships. The Taoist priest, Huang Guanzi, raised his Big Dipper sword and fought against the monster and finally killed the monster. However, the Taoist priest was injured badly, and soon after he was taken back to the capital of Donghai country, he ascended to heaven. However, on the day of his ascension, a god walked down from the clouds and took the Taoist priest away. It was said that Huang Guanzi's righteous deeds had touched the heaven, and the god guided him and turned him into a god. At that time the emperor of Donghai country, Emperor Min Hao, thought that this was an auspicious sign. Therefore he built a temple in the place where the Taoist priest was taken away, and gave him the title of the Incarnation of the Virtuous Lord of Heaven. It was said that even now, the statue in the Temple of the Virtuous Lord was made according to Huang Guanzi's real appearance 400 years ago. Wu Jiasong used to live in the capital, so he had surely been to the Temple of the Virtuous Lord and worshipped the statue in the temple. Now that he heard Huang Guanzi mention it, he took a closer look at him. Isn't he the same as the statue in the temple? Seeing the god, who was worshipped by his family when he was young, standing right in front of him, how could he not be shocked? While he was shocked, the junior colonel snorted coldly and said, "You mortal, you are so blind. The sea monster that our Mr. killed by the East Sea 400 years ago was a traitor who was trying to escape to the shore from our East Sea. After our Mr. came, everything matched up, so you don't even have the chance to doubt him. Humph, you don't know what's good for you, you don't know a god." Wu Jiasong finally kowtowed, and a drop of purple blood came out of his forehead. "Your Highness, Lord of Heaven, forgive me." Huang Guanzi smiled and said, "There's no need for Lord of Heaven. It's just a rumor spread by ignorant people. Most of the powerful people in the Shenmen live in seclusion, and only those with shallow cultivation can travel the world." In the end, such a group of people became the Lord of Heaven, old ancestor and great god in the world. No one knows about the real powerful people. Let's not talk about it. The junior colonel hurriedly said, "Mister, you are too modest." Huang Guanzi restrained his smile and changed the topic, staring at Wu Jiasong. "But now, you know that I am indeed a member of the Freemasonry. But I don't know whether you are or not. Now it's time for me to ask you." Wu Jiasong was originally extremely weak. The reason why he held on was probably to expose the true face of the spy. But just now, not only did he know that he was a member of the Freemasonry, but he also discovered that it was the god he had been worshipping since he was young. His mood was agitated and his body was about to collapse. But now that he heard Huang Guanzi say this, his whole body was lifted up again. But even though his spirit was lifted up, his body couldn't take it. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately spat out a mouthful of black blood. Huang Guanzi didn't care about him. Instead, he restrained his smile and said in a deep voice, "Tell me in detail how you sneaked into the Southernwood residence, how you found out about this place, and what you did from start to end. I know in my heart." At this time, his tone sounded like he was really here to interrogate him. Wu Jiasong spat out another mouthful of black blood. But he also knew that these two people in front of him were not really amiable people. No matter how amiable they seemed before, it could only be regarded as a means and a strategy. Although his consciousness was heavy and his vision was black, he had to say it. When a person was awake, they spoke in an orderly manner. But when their consciousness was muddled, what they thought and what they said were completely different. Before this, he had been tortured, used all kinds of means and even injected with poison. Just now, he was shocked and overjoyed by Huang Guanzi's words, and the poison became even stronger. At first, he still knew what he was talking about. But after talking for a while, he felt like he was drunk. He only felt that Huang Guanzi and the junior colonel's bodies were far and near, and the lights around him were flickering. So some of the details that he remembered, but when it came out of his mouth, it was a different matter. Some of the things that he knew, but he thought that he was asking the emissary of his own society, so he just brushed it off. As he spoke, Huang Guanzi asked him questions. Often he would ask the same question 3 or 4 times, or suddenly interrupt his train of thought and ask him to say something he had said before. He listened to everything in his heart, but his consciousness became more and more blurry. Gradually he became like a half-awake person. He felt that he had said and answered all the questions, but in fact he hadn't. This went on for about the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn before Huang Guanzi finally stopped asking. Wu Jiasong felt that the whole world had become quiet, and his heart was also relieved. But as soon as he let out a breath, he heard Huang Guanzi's tone suddenly become stern. He shouted 3 questions in a row. Every word was like thunder exploding in his heart. He was so shocked that his vision darkened. Even the expression on his face couldn't make up his own mind. There was only confusion left. Huang Guanzi shouted, "First, you said that you met Taoist Mulian in the 9th year of Zhengyu, and then you said that you helped the society with the matter of Clear Lake in the 7th year of Xinyu. Which one came first? I asked you how many times the people from the 13 provinces of Qi contacted you. You said that you only remembered 3 times. Do you know that we don't have a headquarters in Qi? You also said that you were in charge of Mount Qishan of the Freemasonry. But the position of the leader of my society was abolished 4 years ago. Where are you from? Wu Jiasong knew the answer to all 3 questions in his heart. He didn't answer wrong in the 9th year of Xinyu and the 7th year of Xinyu. It was Huang Guanzi who asked the wrong questions. He mentioned what happened in the past 2 years, but it was only a matter of time. But Huang Guanzi heard it in his heart and shouted at him when he was talking about other things in a daze. At first he didn't pay attention. Later he heard it and thought that this senior made a mistake, so he didn't dare to correct him. How could he know that he was now the one to blame? The headquarters of the 13 provinces of Qi. Of course the Freemasonry had a headquarters in Qi. Mount Qishan. Before he snuck into Southern Wood Lodge, he was the Mount Qishan's Mount Qishan. And this position hadn't been abolished. It was still there. These 3 questions made him indescribably shocked. And because his head was dizzy, he pretended to be dumbfounded. After being stunned for more than 10 breaths, he realized that Huang Guanzi did it on purpose. He was framing him. Everything was a trap. From the moment he saw him, it was a trap. He pretended to be kind and friendly so that he would let his guard down. But he hated himself for being so stupid. He really admitted that he was the senior of the Freemasonry in front of the junior. Then this senior changed the topic and framed him. That junior believed him, and after he confirmed it, he believed him even more. And now, shock, fear and anger surged in his heart. Wu Jiasong wanted to widen his eyes, but his face wouldn't listen to him. Instead, because his muscles were pulled, he looked even more dazed and terrified. He called out, "You," but a warm current gushed out from his chest again, blocking his words. Wu Jiasong spat out another mouthful of black blood. He knew that there was no turning back now. He had come here to accomplish something, and he had also successfully deceived Li Yunxin on the East Sea. Who knew that he would meet someone even more difficult to deal with here? In the end, he couldn't overcome this hurdle. He steeled his heart and pounced towards Huang Guanzi. But he felt a chill in his chest. The last thing he saw was half of his body falling to the ground. The junior retracted his hand. The big saber transformed back into a palm. He looked at Wu Jiasong's corpse with disdain, then looked at the terrified expression on his face. He spat, "Pay." In the end, he couldn't escape Master's discerning eyes. We didn't get anything out of him for several hours, but Master's trick revealed his true colors. Huang Guanzi smiled and shook his head. What's true can't be fake and what's fake can't be real. But I killed him here. The junior laughed. How could I really use this kind of thing to confront Master? Isn't that an insult? Jun Shang had already ordered. After Master asked, he directly took care of it. On this Penglai Island, there is no one who doesn't trust Master. Huang Guanzi laughed. I'm relieved that Jun Shang treats me like this. Let's go, you and I will wash our hands and get rid of the foul smell. Chapter 654. The 2 of them did wash their hands. It was the same rule as on land. In this kind of death prison, people who were kidnapped or killed should all be washed, to avoid bad luck. But then they didn't drink like the people on land. They both knew that they had their own errands to do. After saying goodbye to Huang Guanzi, Xiao Zhang went straight to the most splendid palace in the mountains. About an hour later, he appeared in front of Dong Hai King. He met him in his own bedroom. The walls of the palace were inlaid with fist-sized luminous pearls for illumination, so this palace formed a sharp contrast with the dark and spacious main hall. Dong Hai King's appearance was also very different from when he was in the meeting. He didn't wear a dignified robe, nor did he comb his hair neatly. Instead, he wore a black satin robe, which shone like water ripples as he moved. His hair was also loose, not even tied up. He looked dejected and carefree at the same time. When Xiao Zhang saw him, Dong Hai King was sitting on a wide chair, eating fruits and drinking wine from the land. He seemed to be a little drunk, squinting at him. How was it? Xiao Zhang bowed and told him what Huang Guanzi had done just now. Dong Hai King listened quietly. While listening, he drank another pot of wine. Then he took a long breath and slowly stood up. Holding a grape in his hand, he walked slowly on the soft red carpet with his bare feet. Every 3 steps he would slightly raise his head and eat one. After eating all 5 of them, he threw the stalk away and wiped his hands on his sleeves. You said that when Huang Guanzi met him, he was not in a hurry to ask. Instead, he gave him a lot of time to speak slowly. Later, the two matched and proved that Huang Guanzi was indeed a member of the Freemasonry. Xiao Zhang bowed. Yes. Teacher was not in a hurry. Later, when it was teacher's turn to ask that man, he panicked. His words were incoherent and full of flaws. In the end, teacher asked him 3 contradictory questions. That man couldn't answer. He knew that the situation was hopeless, so he suddenly attacked. According to my lord's orders, if I find out that this person is fake and useless, I will kill him. I will later compile the information I obtained from him into a book and present it to my lord. Lord Donghai uttered a faint and sighed softly. All right. Sir's identity was real. This is a good thing. Then we can do as he says. After saying this, he looked at the lieutenant colonel. You're a clever man. It was a pity that his cultivation was too shallow. He had attained the Tao for more than 500 years, and his cultivation level was also low. However, he had a good heart and a bright mind. Alas, this monarch also wants to promote you to the rank of general. But I'm afraid the old fellows won't be convinced. The young superintendent hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground, not daring to speak. Lord Donghai thought for a while and looked at him with bright eyes. But there is one thing that needs a capable, bold and careful person to do. But it was very dangerous and he might not be able to return. These days I've been thinking about who to invite, and after much thought, I could only think of you. There's a saying on the continent, seeking riches amidst danger. You, the young superintendent immediately shouted, Your Majesty, I'll do anything. Lord Donghai smiled. I promised you before that I would call you General Fubo after you pacified the sea. It's also because you're capable. You don't have to rush to agree to this matter. Let me tell you. Even if you don't want to go, General Fubo will still be yours. But if you're willing to go and you succeed, you won't be an inferior general when you come back. The position of left general will be given to you, and those old fellows won't say anything. The young superintendent was really stunned when he heard this. In the military system of Donghai, there were 3 levels of generals. The next level were those inferior generals. General Fubo, General Jinlang and General Baihua, all belonged to this level. The middle level was not permanent. Instead, it was temporarily conferred when there was a war or a need. For example, General of Northern Expedition, General of Southern Expedition, General of Suppressing Rebellion, and so on. There were only 3 of them who were 1 level higher. The first was the General-in-Chief, followed by the General of the Left and the General of the Right. Now he actually said that he would be called the General of the Left after the mission was completed. Even though the young superintendent was eager to make a contribution, he still shuddered. At present, there was only 1 general in the upper level on Penglai Island. It was the General-in-Chief of Donghai that Lord Donghai was also in charge of. What task was it? Was he going to go up to the sky and pick the moon? Seeing his expression, Lord Donghai said in a deep voice, You know what plan Master has set for us. He asked us to join forces with the Dragon King on the sea to attack Li Yunxin. Then he will kill the rest of them one by one, and we will subdue these forces one by one. Now that Li Yunxin has the approval of the Divine Lord, and with our cooperation we may be able to achieve this. However, on our side it's easy to say but difficult to do. Li Yunxin said that he is pretending to agree to the Divine Lord, and that he will eventually fall to our side. But how can we believe this kind of thing so easily? If we are the ones he wants to sacrifice, there will be a big battle in the end. Therefore there is such a task, send someone to his side. When the remaining 7 Dragon King are killed, he will be responsible for communicating with Donghai. At the same time he will observe his methods. When the matter is done and they turn against each other, this person will understand his methods and will be of great use. When everything is settled, this person will be credited with the most credit. Who can say anything about rewarding a general of the left? That's what I want to ask you. The little colonel prostrated on the ground, silent for a long time, and then gasped. Previously he was thinking about going up to the sky to pick the moon. Now that he knew about this, he realized that the difficulty was probably not any lower than going up to the sky to pick the moon. That way River Dragon King Li Yunxin was such a ferocious person. A few days ago, the demon generals under his command had devoured many of the soldiers of Donghai. This was not a common thing even among the demons in the sea. But today, according to Lord Donghai, because General Shifang's words had angered him, he killed his way into the army, sliced General Shifang alive, and ate his flesh. He even hung the half-eaten corpse on the sea as a warning to the public. It was hard to say whether he would accept being sent to the side of such a demon. Even if he accepted it, if he said something wrong he would die. Even if he served him carefully, He had to kill the 7 dragon kings on the sea and the almost endless demon generals under the 7 dragon kings' command. He was a great demon in the mysterious realm, and he always had a way to save his life. But he was just a little colonel and his cultivation was low. It was like a little man drifting in the raging ocean for a few months. How could the chances be described as slim? However, even so he survived. When Lord Donghai and that demon turned against each other, how could he escape? How was this a slim chance of survival? It was clearly a slim chance of survival. Seeing that he had been silent for a long time, Lord Donghai smiled slightly. Go back and think about it. When you are done, come back and tell me. But as soon as he finished speaking, the little colonel bowed again and said in a deep voice, My lord, leave this matter to me. Lord Donghai took a few steps and a smile gradually appeared on his face. Oh? Don't you think that doing this is almost equivalent to death? The little colonel raised his head and said in a deep voice, I thought so just now. But then I thought, that Li Yunxin is not alone. General Shifeng died a miserable death. But it also shows that he has a taboo in his heart. Where there is a taboo, there is a feeling. And it should be a very strong feeling. He also has a few demon generals, some powerful subordinates and even friends around him. If he is a cruel and crazy demon, these things will not happen. His temperament may be difficult to understand, but I think if I know his temper and his appetite, there will be a chance of survival. Besides, as my lord said, riches and honor come from danger. If not for such a great achievement, how could he be the left general? I hope my lord can fulfill my wish. Lord Donghai laughed loudly. You can see it so clearly, and you are the person I am looking for. I did not misjudge you. So, tomorrow morning I will invite all the sea envoys to Penglai for a discussion. You take my token to find Li Yunxin. From now on all the information will be in your hands. Let's start from now on. The little colonel said in a deep voice, Yes, my lord. When the tomorrow mentioned by Lord Donghai arrived, Li Yunxin was sitting on a reef watching the sunrise. A large island reef. Within a radius of a few hundred steps, it was straight up and down. It was as if a huge, thick stone pillar had been inserted directly into the sea. In fact, it was true, Li Yunxin had flattened the peaks of 16 islands before he found such a straight stone pillar. Then he used his supernatural power to insert this stone pillar straight into the sea, only revealing a height of about 200 feet. The reason why he made this seemed to be that he could see the motionless cube 1,000 meters away from him. He could see the appearance of that thing clearly, and he would not feel unhappy because of the corpse sealed in it. The reef was full of complex lines. This should be a means of painting. Li Yunxin was busy all night, and when the sky was about to break, he added the last stroke. Then he breathed a sigh of relief and jumped into the sea to take a bath. He encountered a few unlucky fish that bumped into him and he picked them up. He didn't need to cook fish. Yesterday he sent away the pheasant, and then the 9th young master also ran away in panic because of Red Lady's presence. He didn't know that the army was coming. By the time he heard the shocking commotion and rushed back, everything was already over. Because he felt very guilty, he wanted to chase after the desperate enemy to prove that he was not a coward and avoided the battle. But the people had already retreated, so how could he chase after them? So he wanted to do something. When Li Yunxin caught the fish, the 2 demons took them away as if they were treasures, saying that they would make delicious food for him. It seemed that these demons, who could even swallow whales and dolphins, had to rely on Li Yunxin to catch fish. Li Yunxin sat on the rock, looking far to the east where the sun was getting brighter. At the intersection of the sea and the sky, a fish belly appeared first and then turned red. Then the sun rose and bathed everyone's faces in a warm red. He watched for a while, got up and walked on the reef again. The lines engraved on the stone were like complicated flowers and leaves. But this was only a layer of work. The big tactical formation, which was made up of nearly 100 densely packed magic circles, still needed to be carefully channeled spiritual chi and activated one by one before it could run completely. It was also not a day's work. A lot of spiritual chi was needed to activate the big tactical formation. If he killed tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of sea demons and sacrificed their souls, maybe he could succeed. What the pheasant practiced was the cultivation method passed down by Li Yunxin, so he could understand it a little. The 9th young master couldn't understand it, but he was also curious about what Li Yunxin was doing. But when he asked, Li Yunxin just smiled and said it was for fun. But who would spend so much effort to play? What was he playing? The 2 of them came back when it was getting dark last night. At that time, the stone pillar was already standing in the sea, and the tactical formation on it had not been engraved. However, at that time they could already see that something was wrong with Li Yunxin. He seemed to be injured. It was a new injury and it was in his divine soul. But as far as they knew, Li Yunxin hadn't been injured in the slightest when she'd captured General Shifang in the army. Later, he escaped unscathed under the protection of Red Lady. Therefore, the injury should not have been caused by the fight, but after Red Lady left, it was very strange. Then he saw him spend a whole night engraving these tactical formations. So the ninth young master worried that Li Yunxin was angry with him for not being loyal enough and slipped away. He was busy thinking of ways to please him. After Li Yunxin walked around the reef and checked it, he went to see the ninth young master and Pheasant. When they first met in the temple on a rainy night, the ninth young master explained how to eat human flesh clearly and logically. He thought he was not a good cook, but at least he would not be too bad. Who would have thought that the newly crowned Lord of Heaven was burning a few fishes on top of a ball of demonic flame? Well, he was burning them, not roasting them. Seeing that the fish were burnt and began to smoke, Pheasant was anxious. But the ninth young master said to Pheasant, "What do you know?" He said that Li Yunxin had talked about this when he was chatting with him. The meat had to be burnt with a blazing flame first to lock in the water inside so that it would be fresh and tender. Then, it would be cooked slowly with a gentle fire and finally it would be delicious. So the two demons quarreled. After a while, Li Yunxin came over. He raised his hand and waved it in the air. A handful of water extinguished the demon flame and washed the charred fish into the sea. The two demons were stunned. They thought he was going to get angry, but they saw Li Yunxin's serious face. "Stop it. Since the formation is fine, I'm going to get down to business." He looked at the ninth young master. "In a while, I'm going to summon Lord Shinryu. Do you want to meet her here or hide for a while?" The ninth young master opened his eyes wide. "Summon Lord? Didn't she ask us to go to the Dragon Island? Oh, didn't she ask us to suppress the rebellion first, then go to the island? Oh, didn't she ask us to suppress the rebellion first, then go to the island? She can crown me as Lord Tongtian, but I haven't done anything." This great demon at the peak of the realm of truth was nervous like a child. Li Yunxin sighed. "You are Dragon's son and Shinryu is the Dragon Lord. According to the secular relationship, you are her son. What's the point of a son meeting his mother?" He paused and looked at the ninth young master. "On the contrary, you can ask her for something. A son does things for his mother. It's not a big deal to be spoiled." Chapter 655. The ninth young master's eyes widened. "Act coquettishly?" It was as if he could not understand the word. "What do you want? What do you want?" Li Yunxin thought for a while. "For example, a token. We have to help the Lord deal with the Dragon King of the Sea. However, the Dragon King of the Sea has thousands of soldiers. Some of them are stubborn, but some of them can be won over. These guys, once they see the token of the Shinryu, they might change sides and surrender. So, it's best if we get a token of the Shinryu. I used that token to form your body. Ask her if she still has it." The ninth young master was still widening his eyes. His eyes were big to begin with, but now they looked like two black and white pearls. "But how do I want it?" "Just ask for it. Just ask. The Lord loves you so much, how can he not give it to you?" The ninth young master looked confused. Either he did not believe that someone would love him, or he did not know what it meant to be loved. Before he could say anything, Li Yunxin had already stomped his foot. The patterns carved on the reef lit up, forming a mysterious talisman in the air. The red dot between his eyebrows shot out a golden light and gathered in the talisman. It was like a star that appeared in the daytime, suddenly flashed, and then dimmed. Although the formation could not be fully activated. But at least it could be used in part. After the flash, a transparent door appeared in the air, as if someone had used a sharp knife to cut the space in this world, creating another space. The ninth young master was shocked. "I haven't..." Before he could finish, a furious voice came from behind the door. "Who is it?" As soon as she finished speaking, a burst of fire gushed out from the door. Li Yunxin paused on the rock again. The surroundings of the stone pillar immediately lit up with layers of profound light, completely blocking and absorbing the firelight. It seemed to have absorbed the power contained in it. He raised his voice and called out, "Lord! This lowly official has a presumptuous request to disturb Lord." Shinryu soon appeared at the door. It was as if someone was sitting at home, but the door was suddenly knocked down. This time she did not transform into a dignified robe. Instead, she was dressed in a very elegant and refreshing manner. When he appeared, his brows were tightly furrowed. It was obvious that he was extremely dissatisfied. When he looked down at Li Yunxin from above, he immediately opened his mouth and shouted. But when he saw the ninth young master, he suppressed his anger. Lord Wei River, Lord Tongtian, how dare you? Pheasant had already jumped down from the stone pillar. This was the way of survival for low-level little demons. Regardless of whether it was good or bad, as long as there were many great demons involved, he would try to stay as far away as possible. Demons were not humans. Unless they were especially perverted, people liked to bestow benefits when they were happy. But demons were different. When they were angry, they would eat something. When they were happy, they would also eat something. Who knew if Shinryu, the lord of the demons, was the same? The ninth young master was not as calm as Li Yunxin. When he saw Shinryu's serious face, he was at a loss of what to do. He bowed deeply and called out, "Lord God! Lord God! Lord God!" But Li Yunxin interrupted him, "If it wasn't for the urgency, I wouldn't have been so bold. Lord, yesterday it was there?" He pointed at the immovable cube as he spoke. "Nearly 10,000 allied troops surrounded me. Luckily, my friend helped me and I was able to defeat them." Lord God didn't see the situation at that time. It was extremely dangerous. Shinryu stared at him sternly for a while. She seemed to be less angry. She even smiled mysteriously. "So Lord Wei River is in a hurry to show off? 2 against 10,000 is indeed an achievement worth showing off. But Lord Wei River, don't you want to tell me who your friend is?" Li Yunxin immediately said, "Lord God's blood is in my body. How can I not know? That person is the princess of Dongting, Red Lady with the dragon soul. She originally came to find trouble with Lord God. But I advised her that she was no match for you. If she insisted, she would be asking for trouble. Why not help me to calm the sea first? Then I will help her solve the misunderstanding." She agreed with me and followed my advice. Now I sent her away so she won't mess up our plan. But Lord, after the battle yesterday, I found that not all the marine tribes in the sea respect the Dragon King. Many of them are actually loyal to Lord Shinryu. Lord Tongtian just said to me. He paused and looked at the ninth young master. "Lord Tongtian, a gentleman doesn't covet other people's achievements. You should say it yourself." The ninth young master was still in a daze. He stared at Li Yunxin for a while. When he saw Shinryu also looked at him, he hurriedly said, "Lord, what? It's like this. The demons in the sea can't be killed. If you have Shinryu's token, you can use it to command the demons. Maybe you can make them surrender without fighting. Please give me another token," he said while looking at Li Yunxin. Even a child would be able to tell that Li Yunxin was the one who taught her. Shinryu frowned and looked at him. He didn't know what he was going to do. Li Yunxin coughed softly. The ninth young master looked at his face and remembered that he was called acting coquettishly. How could he act coquettishly? He would never have done such a thing in the first place. However, Li Yunxin didn't give him time to consider when he was in a difficult situation. She had alarmed the true dragon. When Shinryu appeared, her majestic appearance made it difficult for him to think. Most of the time he could only follow his instincts. He was in a dilemma. The moment he thought of the 2 words that Li Yunxin mentioned, it was as if he didn't think it through. He opened his mouth and said, "Mother Divine Monarch, please bestow me another true dragon token on the account that I risked my life in the expedition on the sea." Shinryu was stunned and looked at Li Yunxin. If he could speak his mind, he would say, "What the hell are you trying to do?" The ninth young master respected his mother Shinryu, and felt that Shinryu was the ruler of the demons in the world, and he was made from her scales. In addition, he didn't know much about the world, so although he followed Li Yunxin, he only knew about the battles and killing, but he didn't know the reason for these battles. He was like a small general in a dynasty that was about to be destroyed. He knew that there were emperors and generals, that the world belonged to him, and that he had to kill the enemy and serve the country, but he couldn't see the whole picture and realize that he was involved in the torrent of history. The poor ninth young master thought that Shinryu was still the ruler of the demons in the world and still had the supreme authority, but he didn't know that the dignity of this mother Shinryu was almost gone even with Li Yunxin by his side. Li Yunxin and Shinryu made an agreement to use the ninth young master to make a fuss. Shinryu also wanted to maintain his dignity in front of the ninth young master, especially when Li Yunxin was by his side. This Li Yunxin was detestable. But the ninth young master respected her from the bottom of his heart, and Shinryu needed this kind of respect. This was Li Yunxin's guess. Now he realized that his guess was correct. The ninth young master said those words that made Shinryu frown, but he got the result he wanted. The god in the air stared at Li Yunxin suspiciously for a while, and then at the ninth young master for a while. He said in a low voice, "If it's just this, it's not an unreasonable request." Li Yunxin used Shinryu's scales to draw the ninth young master, and Shinryu wanted him to create more dragon sun like this. No matter what he wanted the Shinryu's token made from the scales, he would have to get it back in the future. It was not a bad idea to give it to him for now. But Wei Shuai-kun, you have to explain something first, then I can give you the token without worry. Shinryu's face darkened. Last time I gave you a drop of blood and you placed it between your eyebrows. But last night I felt the blood leave your body and it took almost half a night. Wei Shuai-kun, why is that? Shinryu claimed that the earring made from the blood could hear what Li Yunxin was doing. But when Li Yunxin was surrounded by Constable Xing in the forest of Qinghe County, he only drew the 9th young master, and Li Yunxin was able to sense it and rush over. It showed that demons and cultivators were very sensitive to things that were related to their origin. That drop of blood could not only hear, it could also feel. It was attached to something and not attached to something. Spiritual energy was connected to the blood, and it was almost like a sensor. But last night Shinryu did feel something strange. Her drop of blood left Li Yunxin's body. The Shinryu-kun was the leader of the demons, so he should have a lot of things to take care of every day. He was not like a spy, who would stay in front of the stage and carefully listen to the information from the other side, except when he was sleeping. Only when he felt that it was an important moment, or when he was free, he would try to listen. But last night was different. There was an obvious abnormal change. The blood left his body, or Li Yunxin used some method to block it. This kind of blatant action clearly meant that he did something last night that he did not want her to know. Today, even if Li Yunxin did not come to her, she would still go to Li Yunxin. That was why she asked this question. After asking this question, she carefully observed Li Yunxin, and realized that there was something wrong with him. Just like what the 9th young master had felt before, Li Yunxin seemed to be injured. The injury was very serious and it was in his spirit. But he was safe and sound when he charged into the army. What happened last night? Who was it that could injure his spirit? He was the dragon son of the mysterious realm. When Li Yunxin heard this, she blinked and coughed. She looked around and said, Jun Shang, it's just that women wear earrings, necklaces, forehead wipes and the like. At night they also take them off. This small official occasionally takes them off, it's no big deal. Shinryu smiled and looked at the 9th young master. Since you call me the Lord God's mother, let me ask you, my little son. Do you know where Lord Wei River went last night? At first, the 9th young master was flattered, but then he showed a troubled expression. He looked at Li Yunxin, then looked at Shinryu and finally said in a low voice, My lord, Lord Wei River, he ran around on the sea last night, shaving off many mountains to make this stone pillar and carving the formation. Shinryu smiled. Is that so? I know that he shaved off mountains. This was after he extracted the blood essence and before the sun was about to rise. Earlier, what did Lord Wei River do? Li Yunxin sighed, looked at the 9th young master, then looked at Shinryu. My lord, there are some things that are better left unasked than asked. I really don't know how to answer. The true dragon smiled again. Since you don't want to say it and you don't think it's hard work enough, then wait until you experience how difficult the battle is, and when you know that you need my help, then you can ask me for the token. After saying this, his figure suddenly faded away as if he was about to disappear. When the 9th young master heard Shinryu's tone, he became anxious. Li Yunxin also seemed to be anxious. He gritted his teeth and said, My lord, I'll tell you. Shinryu's figure did not become clear, as if it was about to disappear. But in the end he turned around to look at him. Li Yunxin said, I went after Li Xinyu. The 9th young master was stunned. Shinryu was also stunned. Li Yunxin sighed, snorted, turned his face away and said angrily, My lord, I'm also a man. Which man wouldn't be tempted when he sees a beautiful woman coming from afar for him? That kind of thing. Do I have to bring the Lord Wei's essence blood and let him hear it? That would be an insult to the Lord Wei. The 9th young master jumped up as if his eyes were about to pop out. You went to provoke her? He looked at Li Yunxin from head to toe, suddenly clapped his hands and laughed as if he had completely forgotten about the majestic Shinryu above. Ha, I know, you and her. Ha, she didn't want to, so she hit you? Yes, ha, besides her cultivation, who else could hurt your soul? Oh, you actually, Li Yunxin also stared at him, his face slightly red. Who said she didn't want to? She was just shy, embarrassed, and forgot how to control her strength. Extremely close to the Grand Elder, can you withstand a light blow? In the end, didn't you? However, 9th young master only giggled and looked at him with a mischievous gaze. Li Yunxin snorted angrily and waved his sleeves. If you don't believe me, you can ask her. From the beginning I didn't come to her, but she came to me. After saying this, he looked at Shinryu. You can also ask her if you don't believe me. But after just one look, he seemed to be embarrassed and looked away, coughed twice heavily and said, That's why I asked you to give me a token. Today because of an accident, I was injured. Will take some time for me to recover. I used this stone pillar to set up a formation. It can protect me, and with Shinryu's token, it can scare the enemies and not let them see any flaws. Shinryu stared at Li Yunshin as if she wanted to see flowers on his face. But every word that Li Yunshin said seemed to be true, and every expression seemed to have no flaws. The ninth young master's thoughts were simple, but she was just surprised. But would he do such a thing? She looked at the stone pillar again. The stone pillar that was densely covered with formations was indeed like what Li Yunshin said. The formation on it was unusually strong, and it seemed difficult to be shaken. Once this thing was activated, it could indeed protect herself, but she still felt that something was wrong. Chapter 656. She was about to ask, Do you have any evidence to prove it? When she heard Li Yunshin said, Don't ask me to prove it, I don't need to use this kind of thing to fool the Lord. He used to be respectful when he met Shinryu. Last time he was rebellious, but it was more like a reasonable and legitimate equal attitude. This time it was different. There was a hint of resentment and a hint of willfulness in his voice. He used to call the ninth young master spoiled, but the ninth young master was very obvious. Now he was also spoiled, but it was subtle and unique. How could Shinryu think he would be like this? But he also didn't believe that, I don't need to use this kind of thing to fool the Lord. There was nothing he couldn't do. However, if Li Yunshin deliberately lied, she couldn't find out anything. She never thought that Li Yunshin would be honest and not make any mistakes. But she also had a plan in her mind, it was just not the right time. When that thing came out, no matter how cunning Li Yunshin was, he would be at her mercy. So she smiled slightly, Okay. It's great that you can find such a helper. After dealing with the things on the sea, I should also deal with the things between me and her. For now you can take this token. If you do things honestly, there may be a surprise. She waved her hand and threw a token to him. Li Yunshin reached out to catch it and looked at it. It was indeed what he wanted. It was different from the token he found in the Yunshan Kuan Hall, but the material was the same. There was some familiar dragon aura and some other mixed aura. At that time, because of those auras, Red Lady mistakenly thought it was not a treasure. But now, if this token was really a part of Shinryu's scale, maybe those mixed auras were something else that he hadn't figured out yet. He called this Shinryu token, but there was also Dragon God token. Now he still had a Dragon God token. It was given to him by the Lord of Dongting when he appeared. It was long and thin like a dagger. Dragon God token was more well known. All monsters knew that it was made from a piece of scale that broke when Shinryu fought with King Rock. The dragon aura on the Dragon God token was pure and strong, which could directly frighten monsters and make them feel awe. But the Shinryu token Li Yunshin found on the cloud was not. The dragon aura was not strong, so it was fake. But the problem was that it could be used as the core to draw the body of the dragons of the ninth young master. If these two things came from the true dragon, did it mean that the true dragon itself had undergone some sort of change? In the past, Shinryu to conquer the Midland. The current true dragon was hiding on the Dragon Island and stirring up internal strife among the dragon sons. She even needed Li Yunshin, whom she didn't trust, to help her complete some things. At least from Li Yunshin's point of view, Shinryu was undoubtedly weak. Was it because of this weakness that the dragon aura became mixed? But why did it decline so much? Was it just because of the dragon soul? If it was, why did it do that? He thought about these questions for a long time, but he couldn't find the final answer. And now he didn't need to think about it anymore. He came to the sea. He was ready to do something. If these things, even if only a part of it, could develop in the direction he expected, then all the mysteries would be solved. In the past he was a small character with no power. Now he was an important person. In the East Sea, whether it was Shinryu, the king of the East Sea, or Li Yunshin, each force knew that the other might have other thoughts. But each force didn't care about those thoughts. They all wanted to use each other to achieve their own goals, and they all believed that once they got what they wanted, they would have enough power to control the whole situation. It was like a game of cards. Everyone had their own trump cards in hand, observing and probing. They hoped to sweep everything at the last moment and the winner would take it all. Shinryu threw the token, glanced at Li Yunshin, then at the ninth young master, smiled and said, Lord Tongdun, do your job well. I'll wait to see you on Dragon Island. The ninth young master quickly bowed and his voice was slightly trembling, Yes. I will remember the Lord's order. When he raised his head again, the door in the air was gone, and so was the Lord Shinryu. The ninth young master immediately jumped up. Did you see that? Did you hear that? Li Yunxin rubbed the token in his hand and replied casually, The Lord called me Lord Tongtian. He said to wait for me on Dragon Island. The ninth young master put his hands behind his back and held his head high. He didn't look like he was trembling in front of Shinryu. He looked like a child who had just been praised. Tell me, what should we do next? Where should we kill first? To the south. As he spoke, he waved his hand to the south. With a loud bang, a series of huge waves exploded on the surface of the sea in the south. Or west. Or north. As he spoke, he exerted his strength randomly, as if he had nowhere to vent his strength. The surface of the sea rumbled and water droplets fell from the sky like a rainstorm. Li Yunxin smiled. Ninth young master, it's not the time to kill everyone yet. Look at me, we still have to wait for a while until I recover my strength, then we can start. Only then did Jiu Gongzi stop and look at him with a frown. You really? Li Yunxin shrugged. You can ask her. The ninth young master hurriedly shook his head. He shook his head and said disappointedly, that little fish is not easy to deal with now. I don't want to see her. So what should we do? Someone will tell us what to do. Li Yunxin turned around and looked into the distance. The waves stirred up by the ninth young master had not subsided yet, like a pond ravaged by a rainstorm. If I'm right, Lord Donghai's people will arrive soon. Let's save some strength and follow them. It was morning when they met Shinryu. Then they spent the whole morning waiting. Li Yunxin claimed that the formation on the stone pillar was drawn by him after thinking for a long time. Once it was fully activated, it could almost resist a full blow from a big demon at the peak of the Shen realm. The ninth young master and Pheasant were very interested in it, but then they speculated that maybe Li Yunxin didn't make this formation to deal with the sea demons. Maybe it was used to guard against Red Lady? If what he said to Zhenlong was true, perhaps in the end, he had angered Red Madam. He came back because he was worried that the little demon girl would cause trouble for him again, so he created this tortoise shell. The more the ninth young master thought about it, the more he felt that his speculation was close to the truth. He decided to hide here with Li Yunxin. He was also worried that the demon would find him out of boredom and beat him back to his original shape to play with. Naturally, he told this to Pheasant. But Pheasant didn't believe it. He thought that Li Yunxin wouldn't suddenly run to entangle with the demon. Even if he did, Li Xinyu had no reason to despise his king. His king was so powerful that if the salted fish demon really wanted to choose a husband, who else could she choose but him? The two demons chatted behind Li Yunxin for the whole morning, but no one could convince the other. At noon, when they finally said they were tired, they noticed that Li Yunxin had stood up and was staring at the east. Then he raised his head and saw a wet human figure being pulled out of the sea with a splash. The person was wearing a soft armor and had his hair tied up. He looked like a young officer. He looked a little panicked, like a rabbit that had just been caught from the ground. As soon as he got out of the water, he saw Li Yunxin standing on a rock with his hands slightly open. He shouted, "Spare me! Spare me! Lord Wei River, spare me! I'm the captain of Donghai Yangwei. I'm under the order of my lord." Before he finished his words, he was thrown to the rock by Li Yunxin. He looked up in a daze and saw the ninth young master, who was looking at him with his eyebrows raised and his face was gloomy and scary. He immediately knew that he was the Lord Tongtian who had swallowed dozens of sea monsters and made a mess in the water prison. He shivered and stood up. He saw another person in colorful clothes. Although he didn't look imposing, he knew that he was Li Yunxin's follower. How could a follower of such a person be ordinary? He hurriedly smiled at him. Chicken Spirit had been enlightened for less than a year. Although he often worked for Li Yunxin, he had some experience. But according to him, he used to listen to books in the Lushan Academy in the city of Wei, so he gradually gained spirituality. Therefore he was not as eccentric as ordinary demons. Instead he was quite kind. Therefore when he saw the junior colonel smiling at him, he smiled back in a friendly way. This smile froze the junior colonel's smile on his face. He thought that this person might be more cruel than Lord Tongtian. Lord Tongtian's cruelty was written on his face, but this one. He had seen many demons who smiled while attacking him. He was the scariest one. He hurriedly avoided Pheasant's eyes. At this time, Li Yunxin turned around and asked him with a cold face, "Why are you so late?" The junior colonel didn't understand and made an ah sound. Li Yunxin immediately showed an impatient expression. "You don't understand? Then go back. Tell your family's Jun Shang to find someone smarter." The The junior colonel hurriedly said, "Yes, I understand. Lord of Wei River, I should have arrived this morning. But it took me some time to find my master. Secondly, I got lost." The ninth young master immediately shouted, "Lost? Lost what? Since you are the subordinate of the Lord of East Sea, how could you get lost in your own sea?" The junior colonel turned to the ninth young master and said in a trembling voice, "Lord Tongdun, please let me know. I was originally a member of the Sea tribe. Before I attained Tao, I drifted with the tide and didn't like to look at the road with my eyes. I can't change this habit even though I have some cultivation. I still follow the Reiki in the sea. Most of the Reiki in the sea goes with the tide. A few days ago the Reiki in the tide was chaotic and the sea was vast, so it was inconvenient for me to walk. Originally I was getting used to it. But last night I encountered the turbulence which made me dizzy. After searching for a whole night, I smelled a familiar smell in the morning and found my way here." He acted like this for the ninth young master, but his words were for Li Yunxin. The ninth young master was satisfied with his attitude, so he didn't scold him anymore. Instead he coughed reservedly, "Well, it makes sense. In the past, when Li Yunxin was a human he was afraid of him. But he was not afraid of him in a humble way. He was afraid of him in a dignified manner. Later, Li Yunxin became Dragon Son and he also became Dragon Son. At least in the eyes of the ninth young master, they were like friends. Pheasant was driven by Li Yunxin, but he tolerated the ninth young master and always had a smile on his face. The ninth young master thought that since he was a subordinate of his friend, he should give him some face so he didn't bully him too much. Until now, this was the first time he saw someone trembling in fear and being respectful to him. He was in a good mood, feeling that the sea and the sky were bluer, so he didn't pay attention to what he said. Li Yunxin snorted, "I will believe your words for now. But today is the first time. If you are not clever again, I will assume that you are not familiar with my style of doing things. If there is a third time, I will give you a chance for the sake of Lord Donghai. But as the saying goes, things don't happen more than 3 times. If there's a 4th time, go back." He said this sternly, not waiting for the junior colonel to reply. He said, "Now tell me, Lord Donghai, have you figured out what to do next?" The junior colonel hurriedly said, "Lord Wei River, my lord has agreed to all your previous requests. Before I came, my lord had summoned the messengers of the sea to discuss the matter of attacking you. Today I am here to give you a message. Last night, the remaining 8 dragon kings all agreed that since thousands of people are no match for Lord Wei River, they should attack with a large army. But it is not something that can be done in a day or even a few days, so we should ask for help from the 10,000-year ancestor." Once Xiao Xiao came to his senses, he began to speak in a logical manner. Li Yunxin raised his hand. "What is the 10,000-year ancestor?" The junior colonel coughed. He seemed to feel that it was inappropriate for Li Yunxin to call the 10,000-year ancestor a thing, but he didn't dare to say it directly. He could only pretend that he didn't hear it, but his tone became more and more respectful. "The 10,000-year ancestor is a powerful figure who lives in the East Ruo River. It is said that he has lived for 10,000 years, and he has countless disciples. On the land there are cultivators and demons from the Xianmen sect. There are very few people in the sea, but there are many demons. But there are also cultivators. These cultivators are demons who want to learn divine sense and Tao. They are all disciples of the 10,000-year ancestor. There are also many disciples of the 10,000-year ancestor in the mansion of the Dragon King of the Sea. No one dares to be disrespectful to him." Li Yunxin was a little stunned and turned to look at the 9th young master and Pheasant. "Did you hear that? The world is really full of strange things. I didn't know there was such a person in the sea." Then he looked at the junior colonel. "According to what you said, the 10,000-year ancestor is very powerful? How is it compared to the Xianmen sect? There are disciples of the 10,000-year ancestor in the mansion of the Dragon King. Are they not afraid that the 10,000-year ancestor will do something bad to them?" The junior colonel hurriedly waved his hand. "What are you talking about, Dragon King? The 10,000-year ancestor has a noble character. For 10,000 years. If he really wanted to do something, he would have done it long ago. It's just that he is not interested in fighting for power, and only wants to pursue the Great Way." Li Yunxin nodded. "Okay. Then tell me in detail about this noble character who has lived for 10,000 years, the 10,000-year ancestor." Chapter 657. In fact, the junior colonel didn't expect that his first meeting would be like this, talking to 3 terrifying demons under the blue sky and blue sea, on a warm reef. Although it wasn't a friendly exchange, it was much better than he expected. At least he didn't have an arm or a leg broken or his life threatened. From the looks of it, this Lord of the Wei River didn't seem to be as difficult to get along with as Lord Donghai thought. Since it was a good start, the junior colonel naturally told him everything he knew. He was happy to tell Li Yunxin about the 10,000-year-old ancestor. He believed that by doing so, the great fiendish demon would be even more apprehensive. It would also increase his chances of survival. The junior colonel spent half an hour telling the story in detail. During this period, in order to leave a good impression on Li Yunxin, he summarized many things in detail. He brushed over the unimportant ones and spent a great deal of time explaining the important ones. It was as if he had made all these things into a story. At first, the ninth young master was impatient, full of contempt for the ancestor. But soon he was attracted by the junior colonel's story and listened with great interest. According to the junior colonel, the 10,000-year-old ancestor lived longer on the sea than Shinryu, and even longer than many big demons. In this world, it had never been determined whether humans or demons had the longest lifespan. Mortals couldn't live more than 100 years. After cultivation they could transcend and live a long life. When they reached the perfected being realm they could be called immortal. But in fact they would die. If a profound realm cultivator couldn't enter the grand supreme realm, the longest recorded lifespan was 3,000 or 4,000 years. It was said that this was because the cultivator's body also had a limit. The body of a mortal was like a paper bag. The paper bag was filled with air. When they began to cultivate, the air would turn into water, and the body would be reborn and become a bag. The more they cultivated, the heavier the things inside would become. Maybe they would become mercury or iron. Therefore the outer shell would be stronger. When they reached the profound realm, the body would be unbelievably strong. But the spiritual energy inside would also become stronger and stronger. If they couldn't enter the grand supreme realm, their body wouldn't be able to bear the spiritual energy inside, and they would explode and die. However, this process was extremely slow and would take thousands of years to complete. However, there was a way to stop the growth of spiritual energy. However, when one's cultivation reached a certain level, the spiritual energy in one's body would be integrated into one. When one moved, sat, or lay down, the spiritual energy would circulate spontaneously, regulating one's breathing and breathing. Unless he dispersed his spiritual chi or his own cultivation base, he wouldn't be able to do so. However, no matter which one it was, it meant that he would die and his physical body would not be preserved. As the saying goes, there is no retreat in the path of cultivation. This was also the meaning behind it. At the Grand Supreme Realm, one should be able to live longer. However, no one knew what the limit of a Grand Supreme cultivator's lifespan was. After becoming a Grand Supreme, one would have to ascend. In the past 1,000 years, there had been no news of the Celestials, and the Grand Elder had not been able to ascend. This was the first time such a situation had occurred. However, it was very common for demons to live for a long time. Profound realm demons like Lord Dongting, who had lived for more than 3,000 years, weren't rare at all. It wasn't strange for a true realm demon to live for 1,000 or 2,000 years. When a cultivator reached the transcendent state, their lifespan was only 200 or 300 years. But when a demon reached the transcendent state, he could live for nearly 1,000 years without seeking death. The ocean was vast and there were more demons in it than on Midland. Shinryu appeared 2,000 years ago. But before that, there were already many demons in the East Sea who had lived for more than 3, 4, or 5,000 years. At that time, the demons were like the feudal states on the land. The vast ocean around their lair was their sphere of influence. Some of them were cruel and liked to go on expeditions. This kind of people always died early. Some of the more docile ones only guarded their own territory and slowly developed it. In the end, they could be considered to be living in harmony with each other and living in peace. When Shinryu appeared, he disrupted the peace. First, he set off a storm of blood and killed all those who disobeyed him. Then he recruited those who volunteered to join him and assigned 9 immortals to take care of them. When he mentioned 9 immortals, he was vague. Because he had only been cultivating for a few hundred years, and he was born under the banner of the Lord of the East Sea. The Lord of the East Sea had always claimed that the previous goddess Penglai was a traitor, so he couldn't say too much. He just needed to let everyone know. But those who disobeyed were killed, and those who surrendered were taken in. There were always fish that escaped the net. There were also some demons in the ocean who didn't like to gather subordinates or take over territories. They only focused on cultivation and wanted to reach a higher realm. These demons might have lived for more than 4,000 or 5,000 years. But because they lived in seclusion, very few people knew about them. Another type of demon was the 10,000-year ancestor. Before Shinryu appeared, very few people knew about such a person. After Shinryu took in many monster kings because there was a system and the demons were able to communicate with each other, they realized something. Some demons had supernatural powers that didn't belong to them. Demons were born with several kinds of supernatural powers after they gained enlightenment and gained a human body. They didn't need to learn them because they were born with them. But now, there were some demons that had mastered something similar to Taoism. These demons usually lived in the territories of many monster kings, so they didn't attract much attention. Even if someone paid attention, they would only think that they were really powerful. But as these demons were disrupted and gathered together, more and more people realized that these powerful demons all looked very similar. Compared to other demons, most of them were mild-tempered and knowledgeable. And the knowledgeable here mainly referred to their understanding of things on land. These demons didn't often show their true bodies. Perhaps it was because they wanted to hide their supernatural powers. Some of them occasionally revealed their past, either claiming to be from the east, or saying that they had a fortuitous encounter. There were also quite a few who said that their master was the lifeless immortal gate of the Wuxia River. On land, everyone respected the celestials, thinking that there really were deities in the world. But on the sea, without the teachings of the celestial gate cultivators, the demons didn't respect the celestials a lot. Most of them felt that they were just another type of existence with great power, like the demons to humans, the fish and beasts in the sea. So when they heard the name Lifeless Immortal Gate, no one cared at first. They only felt that it was just nonsense. This kind of thing wasn't rare in the sea. Any fiendish demon would try to stick gold on themselves. But when it came to Shinryu, the demons that had fused together realized that it wasn't just one of their brothers who boasted like this. Maybe somewhere far away, under the command of a certain demon king, there was someone who said the same thing. This meant that the lifeless immortal gate might really exist. It had many disciples, and when the demon kings were in charge of their own mountains, they had already been scattered all over the ocean, and now they had finally surfaced. Then there was a question. This question wasn't easy to ask. Anyone who found out that their subordinates belonged to someone else would also feel surprised, angry, or terrified. After torturing and killing nearly 100 demons who had exposed their identities, they finally realized that the history of the lifeless immortal gate was long and terrifying. To become a so-called member of the immortal gate, one had to have a lucky chance. For example, a demon who had just achieved the Tao might be found by someone. He said that he had been observing for a long time, and now he would give you some tests. After passing the test, he would guide you to become a member of the immortal gate. Every demon had their own master, and could only be guided. They would never accept anyone taking the initiative to join them. He wanted to interrogate a demon and find out who his master was. Then torture his master, and ask about his master's master. Demons had a long lifespan, and most of these lifeless immortal gate people had high positions under the demon kings because of their abilities and knowledge, so it was even more difficult for them to die. As a result, one could pull out a string of them. He slowly touched them. Finally, he touched those who were already dead. The lifeless immortal gate was similar to the celestial sect of wonders in that it focused on inheritance. Every disciple clearly remembered their own master, ancestor, and so on. In the end, he discovered, could be traced back to more than 10,000 years ago. Going back further, because the evidence was untraceable and the memories were fuzzy, there was no way to confirm it. But at the very least, the lifeless immortal gate had indeed been passed down in the ocean for more than 10,000 years. At this time, the shock and anger in the hearts of those who knew should have been mostly replaced by fear. The disciples of the lifeless immortal gate were all over the ocean, and there were probably even more that had not been found. Because they had many kinds of abilities and knowledge, most of them were in high positions. For 10,000 years. Among these people, some were deputy generals under the demon king, and some became military advisors. Some became the prince consort, and some even became the demon empress. If these people had any malicious intentions, they would have been able to turn the entire ocean upside down long before the true dragon showed up. Without the need for the true dragon to take action, they would have been able to turn the entire ocean upside down long before the true dragon appeared. After realizing this, they gradually slowed down, allowing communication to become possible. After a long period of 50 years, they finally understood the truth. The ruler of the lifeless immortal gate was called the 10,000-year-old ancestor. The disciples of the immortal gate called him ancestor in private, and on more formal occasions they called him sect leader. This 10,000-year-old ancestor was said to have lived for 40,000 years. There were even those who revered him to the extreme, claiming that the old ancestor was born with the heavens and earth, and would exist forever. The dojo of the lifeless immortal gate was in the Wuxia. Everyone knew how terrifying the Rua Shui was. No matter how powerful your abilities were, once you entered the area of the Rua Shui, your abilities would quickly disappear. So no matter how arrogant the demons on the sea were, they all knew not to go into the Rua Shui. But it was said that the old ancestor's cultivation was extremely high, and he preferred to go to dangerous places. Opening up a dojo in the Rua Shui was not without its benefits. After all, demons were demons, and they were naturally more cruel and stubborn than humans. Demons had to turn into a human, and once they turned into a human they would have abilities. Many stubborn disciples all had abilities. What would happen if they caused a ruckus? But if it was the dojo in the Rua Shui, their abilities would be gone. Demons were no different from mortals, just that their bodies were stronger, and their personalities were more stubborn. To control them, it could be said that it saved a lot of effort. And it was precisely because in the Rua Shui, if someone else led an army to attack, they would have to follow the way humans fought on land and honestly cross the sea by boat. The sea was vast, and the demons were not good at building ships, so where would they find a fleet to fight? It was also because of this that they realized that the 10,000-year-old ancestor, whether the rumor was true or not, had already firmly held the initiative. And they only found out now and were making a fuss about nothing. It was really too late. And then, until now, the Dragon King of the Sea, like the Lord of the East Sea, searched for skilled craftsmen on land, and transported them to the sea to train, was probably because of this. As the saying goes, it's better to be prepared. If one day something that no one wanted to see happened, and a fight broke out, they had to make sure that they had a way to transport their soldiers over. After the demons knew about this, they gradually realized that the lifeless immortal gate of the 10,000-year-old ancestor did not seem to have any dangerous intentions. That old ancestor never showed his true face. But he also sent messengers to bring a message. It said that he had seen a heavenly being in the past, and secretly learned Xian techniques from him. After that, in order to concentrate on cultivation, he went to live in seclusion in the Rua Shui, in order to put himself in a dead end and then leave the Rua Shui, or he would die in there. Later he really did succeed. Since he succeeded, he could not bear to enjoy the Xian techniques alone. So he found those demons that occasionally wandered into the Rua Shui to pass on his skills. He was originally free to pass on his skills, and only depended on fate. But he had lived for too long. Even if he only accepted a disciple every few decades, after tens of thousands of years, his disciples had spread all over the ocean. He was afraid of arousing the fear of many monster kings. He was even more afraid that this secret would be known, and people would come to his door to interrogate him about the Xian techniques, which would cause a lot of trouble. So he endured it and did not let his disciples leak anything. After that, it was said that Shinryu went to the lifeless immortal gate to meet the 10,000-year-old ancestor. Then he announced that the 10,000-year-old ancestor really had no ill intentions, and the demons released the people of the immortal gate, and announced that they would no longer pursue the matter. Until now, if someone was a disciple of the immortal gate, it was a glorious identity. It was easy to get promoted and even easier to stay alive. The Dragon King would occasionally choose some confidants, and wanted to send them to the immortal gate. But the 10,000-year-old ancestor really only looked at talent. Some were accepted and most were rejected. As for what the old ancestor was, whether he was a human or a demon, it was still uncertain. But he should be a demon. Even the Grand Sage would find it hard to live for 10,000 years. The junior colonel said all this and then said, "I have a relative. He is a disciple of the lifeless immortal gate. A few days ago he was invited by me, but now that his lordship is in need of people, he temporarily didn't go." There are many capable people under the old ancestor. Wei River Lord killed the 10,000-strong army a few days ago, and there were no people from the immortal gate in the army. But very soon those people will come to test Wei River Lord's strength. Unlike us demons who only know how to use our natural abilities, they also know how to set up formations, use magic tools, and dispatch troops. Wei River Lord must not be careless. His lordship said that if Wei River Lord can defeat them and make them return in low spirits, it will be easier for him to do things in the future. When the 9th young master heard this, he snorted, "What's there to be afraid of? I have seen hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers fighting with the cultivators of the celestial gate on the land, magical treasures flying everywhere. When have I ever been afraid? Little guy, let me ask you, when will they come? Let them see how powerful this young master is." The junior colonel hurriedly turned to the 9th young master and said with a smile, reporting to Lord Tongtun, "They will arrive very soon. When I left, they were already gathering troops. I reckon they will come at any time. Maybe now we have already been surrounded." Ninth young master was taken aback. He exclaimed. He quickly turned around and looked all around. Where? Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Recently, if I have given everyone the impression of too much description of the background and details, my thoughts are like this. The main purpose is to create a three-dimensional sense. For example, Shaoli came to the ocean. Then everyone's first impression of the ocean may be vast, right? The vast sea, the vast sky. Then it is difficult to have anything else. It is not like on the land, because we live on the land. Just mention a town, and instantly imagine houses, inns, and so on. Taverns, streets, pedestrians, hawkers, merchants, and so on. If I say fine sunlight through the shade of trees, again, friends with good imagination may not only imagine a meadow, a big tree, and the scene of the sun shining high up in the sky, but also the scene of young boys and girls tired of chasing and playing, lying on the green meadow with their eyes closed with a slight smile on the corner of their mouth. So I have to spend more ink to write something. For example, when Li Yunxin first came to the sea, he only had an impression of the sea. Then he slowly knew that there was Penglai Island. He also knew that there were many mountains on Penglai Island, and there were magnificent palaces on the mountains. He also knew that there were many demons outside the island, and the demons had their nests. He also knew that the sea was actually very lively with a social structure and so on. These things have to be explained bit by bit, and then the whole world can slowly appear. So this is not a fluke, I want to build it slowly. Chapter 658. At this time, Li Yunxin's face suddenly turned cold and he asked the junior colonel, "You said you followed the flow of spiritual energy in the sea. But last night the spiritual energy was chaotic and you lost your way. How did you find your way back?" The junior colonel scratched his head. "It's chaotic. But it's strange, when it's almost noon, the surrounding area is no longer chaotic and Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief. "Then I guess you're right. We've been surrounded." After saying this, he slowly walked to the center of the reef and lightly stamped his foot. Interesting. Suddenly there was a rumbling sound in the sea. It was as if his foot had nailed something to the bottom of the sea, causing the whole seabed to shake. In this short moment, countless golden lines appeared above and below the sea, like a spider web. And the center of the spider web was the stone pillar they were on. Li Yunxin stood with his hands behind his back and shouted, "Friends of the lifeless immortal sect, come out." But the sea was still calm after he shouted. He thought it would be immediately waving flags and loud gongs and drums. However, the scene that he expected did not appear. It was as if everything was just an illusion. The ninth young master, who had previously shouted to show them some power, now had a serious expression on his face. He felt like he was standing on the top of a high wall, and there were archers lying in ambush around him. He didn't know when they would shoot him. Hearing Li Yunxin shout and still not showing up, he felt even more uneasy. He moved closer to Li Yunxin and whispered, "I say, did you see wrong?" Li Yunxin calmly pulled him aside and asked him to give up the formation map under his feet. "I can't be wrong. It's just that the person who came is a bit wild." After saying this, he glanced around and laughed again. Interesting. He always had a strong curiosity about the unknown. For example, everything he saw when he first entered the cultivation world was novel to him. It was like the experience of some people in the game in his previous life. When he first arrived in a world, everything was unknown. He ran around and saw a lot of new things. But after experiencing many things, he had now reached the mysterious realm. Although he hadn't reached the Grand Supreme level, he had a good understanding of many things in this world. He only cultivated the painting Dao, and only had a slight understanding of Daotong and Kenzo techniques. But as the saying goes, if you understand one thing, you will understand all things. It was just like how once gaming fans understood the mechanics of a game. Even if they didn't run through the entire map or experience every activity, they would roughly know what it was all about. Perhaps there were subtle changes, but the boundaries and scope were already imaginable. It was a little boring. But the methods of the lifeless immortal sect were a little interesting. Due to some unimaginable reason, the chaotic flow of spiritual power in the eyes of Xiao Xiao and the others seemed to have some sort of pattern to it. That was why he could sense the arrival of Xiao Xiao. However, he did not sense anyone from the lifeless immortal sect. Although his stomp had forced out the other party's formation, he hadn't been able to find the other party's hiding place. Judging from the current situation, the other party had already set up this formation before Xiao Xiao arrived. Although perception was the same as a mortal's observation, there was a difference between a quick glance and careful observation. However, To be able to escape the perception of the mysterious realm dragons, it was indeed a skill. The cultivation of the person who came was either ridiculously high, able to crush him, or his methods were ingenious, something he had never seen before. However, when he carefully observed it now, he felt some familiar techniques, similar to Daotong and Kenzo techniques. It seemed that the origin of the 10,000-year-old ancestor that Xiao Xiao had mentioned was true in some aspects. It was indeed related to the celestial heart of the celestial sect of wonders. Since he didn't want to show himself, Li Yunxin smiled and raised his right hand to make a hand seal. A buzzing sound rang out around the stone pillar, and a resplendent golden light barrier appeared. As soon as the barrier appeared, it spun rapidly, like a winch retracting its string. The surrounding golden lines appeared once again and began to flicker crazily. However, it was still no match for the barrier set up by Li Yunxin, and was pulled over by him like a fishing net. In just a breath's time, the surface of the ocean became empty, and all the strange phenomena disappeared without a trace. Only then did he shout, "Friend, why don't you show yourself?" In the east, about 300 meters away, a human figure finally appeared. The newcomer was wearing a plain green Taoist robe, his hair neatly combed, and he had a neatly trimmed short beard. He was neither ugly nor beautiful, and his face was calm. At first glance, he seemed to be the most common traveling Taoist priest in the Middle Continent. However, the aura around him was strong, and his cultivation was not lower than Li Yunxin's. As soon as the junior saw this person, his expression changed greatly, and he couldn't help but let out a cry. Li Yunxin didn't show any reaction, but the ninth young master became anxious. "What? What's wrong?" The junior took a step back as if he could stay further away from that person. As if this would allow him to distance himself even further from the man, he muttered softly, "This is the Purple Knight enlightened." The ninth young master frowned. "Go on." The Purple Knight Taoist has always been the one to contact and coordinate with the Dragon King on the sea. His cultivation is already in the mysterious realm. He can be regarded as a person of the lifeless immortal sect on the ocean. Now he is here. The junior spun around on the spot, seeming to be at a loss, or as if he wanted to find a hole to hide in. He kept muttering, "My life is over, my life is over." Hearing this, the ninth young master and Pheasant looked at each other. They had been nervous before, but now they suddenly relaxed. But now he suddenly relaxed and let out a long, "Oh." Profound realm? Taoist Lord was also in the mysterious realm. Hatred was also in the mysterious realm. Fiend King was also in the mysterious realm. Zither Lady was also in the mysterious realm. After all, there were many profound realm cultivators and demons who had died long ago at the foot of Cloudy Mountain. "Don't make a fuss." The ninth young master looked at the junior with disdain and curled his lips. As soon as the Purple Knight Taoist appeared, the corner of his mouth curved into a smile. It was not a sneer or a sneer. It was more like an ordinary martial artist visiting a friend on the land. He cupped his hands at Li Yunxin from afar. "Wei River Dragon King thinks too much. I'm the only one who came. I'm not talented enough to be the vanguard. If I can match the Dragon King, I will go back to ask for reinforcements. If I can win by a stroke or two, it will save me the trouble of mobilizing so many people. Wei River Lord, I am here on behalf of the demons in Yingzhou of the West Sea to find a female demon in red. Someone said that the female demon and Wei River Lord are close friends. Does the Dragon King know where she is? If you can tell me, we can avoid the trouble of fighting today." Li Yunxin also cupped her hands. I know. I don't want to tell you." The ninth young master clapped his hands and shouted, "Good brother-in-law, how domineering." The young master was startled and panicked even more. He looked left and right as if he wanted to slip down the stone pillar and jump into the sea. But Shanji stood beside him and stared at him solemnly. The Purple Knight Taoist put down his hands and still smiled. "Good. Dragon King, please take the first move." With this move, the surface of the ocean was lowered by 3 feet. The 3 feet did not disappear into thin air. Instead, it instantly spewed out a vigorous fog, covering the sky and the sun, blocking out the sunlight. The surroundings suddenly darkened. In the blink of an eye, the white fog had turned into purple fog. It was not because of anything else, but because the dense purple electric snakes had borrowed the fog and were charging towards them in a menacing manner. Li Yunxin was also an expert in playing with thunder and lightning, but he could not create such a scene. This was not because of the demon's own supernatural power, but because it was supplemented by an unknown secret technique, and with the help of the water vapor on the ocean. The Purple Knight Taoist looked ordinary and spoke calmly. But when he made a move, his momentum was astonishing and he was extremely ferocious. With a loud hum, the shield around the stone pillar shone brightly. But in the blink of an eye, it was suppressed by the purple electric light, so dim that it was almost destroyed. Li Yunxin shouted in a deep voice, "Good, good, good." He rubbed his hands in front of his chest, and a green steel sword flew out from his chest and nailed under his feet. Once the sword was taken out, the light of the shield shone brightly, but it still could not suppress the light of the electric snakes. The hair of everyone on the stone pillar floated in the air, as if they were alive and felt the imminent danger. He rubbed his hands again and took out a sparkling and translucent lotus. Once the lotus appeared, it immediately turned into countless flowing lights and attached to the shield. With the help of the two, the shield let out a low hum again. Like the golden threads in the sea, it absorbed all the fog and electric snakes. The sea was empty. The sky turned blue again. But when they looked again, what was on the surface of the ocean was no longer water, but raging fire. It had become a veritable sea of fire. Purple Night Enlightened stood in the air and said with a smile, "This is the means of Shi Yi's mysterious realm. Lord Wei River found it rather strenuous to receive it. I thought this shouldn't be the case. Was Dragon King injured? Do you want to fight another day?" Li Yunxin looked at him. Meeting a bosom friend in wine and a worthy opponent in chess is one of life's greatest joys. Why another day? Feel free to come. Taoist Violet Knight said, "Then please be careful, Dragon King. Now it's time for me to master the mystical realm." The junior officer was scared out of his wits and stammered, "Qing Xuan Miao. I'm here under orders. Can I?" Before he could finish his words, he heard a wild, angry roar between the sea and the sky. A ferocious devil suddenly appeared, with the sun on his head and the deep sea under his feet. He put his palms together and smashed down. The strike seemed to shatter the void. The gigantic fist blotted out the sun and tore the sky apart as it fell. Along the way, rolling clouds of fire appeared and disappeared, and the dark night sky appeared again, as if it was the boundless universe before this world appeared. The stars in the sky were brilliant, magnificent and fantastic. The stars fell like a rainstorm and the space burst like bubbles. This was undoubtedly the magical power of the mystical realm. When it appeared, the fist was above the sky and the next moment, it hit the shield. The whole stone pillar suddenly sank, and even Li Yunxin opened his mouth and shouted in a low voice. This shout seemed to come from the chest cavity of the ocean. The raging fire above the sea immediately dissipated, and the waves surged up to the sky. With a buzz, a layer of brilliant armor appeared on his body, which was the treasure he refined on Cloud Mountain. Chapter 659. However, the armor that was formed from several treasures left behind by the saints shattered and turned into countless streams of light the moment the fist landed on the shield. Before the flowing lights dissipate, a second layer appears on his body, it also shatters. Then the third layer, the fourth layer, the fifth layer, the sixth layer. Every time a layer appears, the stone pillar is smashed down an inch. His face first became pale, then golden paper, then golden blood seeped out of the corners of his mouth, then from his nose and finally from the corners of his eyes. Before, the ninth young master was calm. But now he is affected even though he is in the shield. Although Li Yunxin is in charge of the big tactical circle, he is still injured by the impact with layers of treasures, not to mention his cultivation at the peak of the realm of truth. Feeling annoyed, he immediately falls to the ground and uses his monster power to protect his heart. Pheasant's cultivation is even lower. He spits out a mouthful of blood and also sits down. The cultivation of the junior colonel should be between the ninth young master and Pheasant. His face is pale and his limbs are trembling. He crawls on the ground and cries for his parents. He keeps saying things like, "I don't want the credit, help," and so on. But now the two super powerhouses in the realm of mystery are fighting and everything within 100 miles is a dead land. Where can he go? He can only pray that Li Yunxin is really as powerful as the legend says and can hold on, so that he won't die on the first day. Li Yunxin withstands the 6 waves of impact with all his strength. Then he hears the rumbling voice of the huge demon god on the top of the sky. "Lord Wei River, it's not a wise move to defend. Why don't you try to divert the force? You are seriously injured now, but I still have 30% of my strength that I haven't used yet." Li Yunxin suddenly shouts, "Do you think you are in Dongting?" His words are not understood by the Purple Knight Immortal, the ninth young master and the junior colonel. But Pheasant understands. He opens his eyes and yells with all his strength, "Dragon King! It's not worth it." However, Li Yunxin raised his sword fingers and suddenly appeared in the form of a fiend god. His entire body was surrounded by golden light, and a red dot on his forehead radiated a dazzling radiance. A humanoid puppet appeared in his palm. He pressed it against his forehead and shouted, "Let me borrow the Divine Lord's divine power." The puppet's body swelled up and turned into a humanoid figure that was no different from its fiend god body. It also supported the barrier. Just in time to see the huge fist smashing down another inch. The barrier collapsed with a loud bang and the humanoid figure also dissipated. A layer of the scales on Wei River Dragon King's body shattered. But in the end he managed to persevere. The fiery clouds in the sky vanished in an instant. Taoist Master Violet Knight's fiend god avatar also disappeared, and the surface of the ocean returned to normal. However, half of the stone pillar had already been nailed down, and the pheasant was knocked unconscious on the ground. Xiao Xiao was still conscious but his limbs were weak. He could only mutter under his breath, unable to escape. Then, he looked at the perfected Violet Knight 1,000 feet away. His Taoist robe was neat and his hair was neat and tidy. He still had a smile on his face, but he raised his hand and wiped the corner of his mouth. He lowered his head and looked. "Although you rely on many Dharma treasures," he said amiably, "Wei River Lord should only have the cultivation of Shi mystical realm. I don't know what injury he suffered, but his demonic power is almost gone. I've never seen someone who could withstand 2 of my attacks and injure me." Wei River Lord said it well. Meeting a bosom friend in wine and a match in chess is really satisfying. But now I's words still count. Wei River Lord told me where that demoness went and we won't have to fight today. Do you agree? Scales regrew on Li Yunxin's body. He opened and closed them and clouds rose and lingered around him, clanking. He panted heavily 3 times, then took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Again." Taoist Master Violet Knight shook his head slightly and looked at Xiao Xiao. His smile faded a little. "You came to see Wei River Lord last night to report the news. He should have spent the entire night preparing and storing up his energy for today's battle with me. Why did you come so late that he couldn't use his full strength?" The junior colonel was already trembling. Now that he heard Taoist Master Purple Knight ask him this question, it was even more like he was being held by a demon-headed broadsword on his neck. He was so frightened that his soul was about to leave his body. He hastily crawled a few steps towards the Taoist Master and prostrated himself on the ground, calling out, "Taoist Master, please forgive me. Taoist Master, please allow me to report. This lowly one set out last night, but I got lost and only arrived at noon. I didn't know." The Purple Knight Immortal ignored him. He looked at Li Yunxin again. "Then Wei River Dragon King, is he ready to take my attack of Guangxing mystical realm?" Li Yunxin raised his hand. "Wait a moment." Then he waved his hand again, and a gust of demonic wind swept up the 9th young master, the pheasant, and the junior colonel, and sent them to the top of the sky. The 9th young master only had time to say, "What are you doing?" before his voice disappeared. The Purple Knight Immortal waited for him to do all this, then smiled and said, "You are a loyal person, afraid that you will affect them. But if you die, where can their cultivation go? Why don't—" Li Yunxin grinned, revealing his sharp fangs. He smiled and said, "Immortal, you are wrong. I'm not sending them away. You are afraid that I will use my true power and hurt them. You are the one attacking. Now it's my turn. Purple Knight Immortal, are you ready to take my attack of Shi mystical realm?" The Taoist was stunned at first, then he smiled. "Good. Come." As soon as he finished speaking, the sea surface suddenly broke and huge waves suddenly rose. It was as if someone was stirring up the ocean with a stick. The Wei River Dragon King rose to the sky, grabbed downward with his palm and shouted, "Then, come." The stone pillar he was standing on suddenly jumped up. It was originally huge and long, but in an instant, it shrunk to the size of an ordinary spear and was held in his palm. The stone pillar suddenly disappeared, and the seawater collided with each other. Soon it swelled up as if there was a terrible power that was about to gush out. The next moment the hot magma rushed up with a bang, as if he had pulled out the bottom of the sea. Li Yunxin bathed in the magma, and the long stick in his hand that had transformed from the stone pillar was surrounded by purple lightning and golden light. He shook his left hand again and a green iron chain began to spin in his palm. Each loop was longer than the last, and in the blink of an eye, it had encircled the vast ocean, as if it had turned into an iron cage. Without saying anything he raised the stick and smashed it. The two were separated by 100 feet. But with this smash, his fiend god body arrived in front of the Purple Knight Immortal in the blink of an eye. But the Immortal was not an ordinary person. There was only a shadow left in his original place, and he was 100 feet away. With their strength and speed, it would be too long to even describe the time it took for the staff to smash down as an instant. However, this staff strike was both fast and slow. The Purple Knight Taoist moved with Li Yunxin. In the time it took to raise the stick and smash it down, thousands of afterimages appeared on the surface of the ocean. It was the Purple Knight Immortal hiding and Wei River Dragon King chasing. It was originally just a fight between two people, but now it seemed like a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses. The iron chain obtained from Bai Yanjun also displayed its miraculous effect at this moment. Aiming at the illusory body of the Purple Knight Immortal, it suddenly stabbed out with the chain. If it hit, even if it couldn't take away his soul, it would still make his body stiffen and suffer the hit. But since the Immortal was said to have an attack of the Profound Realm, he was someone who was about to step into the peak of the Profound Realm. Every strike of the iron chain missed and it couldn't trap him. But because of this, the Immortal had no time to use any other methods. In this long and extremely short period of time, Li Yunxin actually had the time to shout again, "Formation complete." When he smashed the Purple Knight Immortal, he left behind many afterimages on the surface of the ocean. If one looked at those afterimages horizontally, they would only appear to be a field of brilliant light. But if one looked down from the sky, one would discover that they actually formed some kind of rhythmic pattern. Following his shout, the afterimages on the surface of the ocean suddenly connected. A clear clanging sound rang out. It was as if the sky and space had frozen. The ocean surface and space where the two of them were suddenly became a flat surface, a painting. This painting was extremely strange. It was clearly a space that had length, width, height, and depth, but one couldn't see how thick it was. Looking at it horizontally, it seemed to disappear between heaven and earth. Looking up, one's gaze seemed to be instantly sucked in. It couldn't go up, couldn't go down, could only flow in all directions. It was as if it existed in space and time, but also as if it was independent. Ordinary vision and perception couldn't describe this kind of experience. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, they really wouldn't be able to imagine it. It was as if the two of them had been drawn into a painting. There was no concept of thickness, only a flat surface. If a person dodged in the vast sky, up and down, front and back, left and right, they could go anywhere. But what if they were on a framed piece of white paper? Now this space had suddenly become a piece of paper, and the frame of this paper was the iron chain that Bai Yanjun had given him. Like a brush drawing lines on a piece of paper, the white paper had to be filled up. The Purple Knight Immortal darted left and right in the painting, while Li Yunxin followed him like a shadow. The illusions left behind by the two of them quickly filled up the canvas. When the Purple Knight Immortal had nowhere to go and couldn't rush to the picture frame iron chain, with a piercing sound, countless Li Yunxin's illusions smashed their long staffs onto the bodies of the Purple Knight Immortal. At this moment, the people who had been swept up by Li Yunxin's monstrous power were still rising up and hadn't fallen. But the painting paper suddenly shattered. Countless fragments intertwined with each other and annihilated into a blinding light. Some splashed into the sea. Once they came into contact with the water, they instantly turned into a bottomless black hole. The seawater was sucked in with a rumble, turning into a terrifying vortex. There were thousands, tens of thousands of such vortexes. In the blink of an eye, the surface of the ocean was sucked clean, revealing the seabed. The surrounding seawater immediately filled up with a roar, surged, and burst forth with a deafening scream. On the boiling surface of the ocean, the two figures separated, still separated by 100 feet. Li Yunxin had returned to his human form. He held a long staff in one hand and an iron chain in the other. His white robe was torn, his hair was disheveled, and there was not a single part of his skin that was intact. It was as if he had been fished out from a sea of blood. The Purple Knight Immortal was still unharmed. But there was no smile on his face and his face was green. He stood with his hands behind his back and stared straight at Li Yunxin. After 3 breaths, he gritted his teeth and spat out, "What technique is this?" Li Yunxin grinned. The row of fine white teeth on his scarlet face was especially obvious. He shook his left hand and put away the iron chain. He swung his right hand and plunged the stone staff back into the water. Soon it expanded into the stone pillar from before. "This technique is called," he said with a smile, "dimensional reduction strike." Chapter 660. The Purple Knight Taoist frowned. The name is very strange. This method is unheard of. When he said this, he was slightly out of breath. He was like a mortal who had run a long way and now stopped to speak. But I know what method you used to return the 2 blows I gave you earlier. He shook his head. Creating a figure is 1 point, creating 10 million figures in that space is 10 million points. 10 million points of power is added to my body. I have the cultivation of broad life mystery, but I suffered a loss here. He gritted his teeth, but he couldn't hold it in. Finally he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body suddenly withered as if his muscles and bones had been pulled out. I accepted wholeheartedly. Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin. Your famous name is indeed not in vain. Li Yunxin landed back on the stone pillar. His body shook, scattering the blood. Only then did the golden wound below be revealed. He was naked, but acted as if no one else was watching. He flipped his palm and took out a jade bottle. He took out some ointment and carefully applied it to his wound in front of the Purple Knight Taoist. Only then did it transform into a set of clothes. The Purple Knight Taoist frowned and said in a low voice, "You are a strange person. I haven't met an opponent like you for a long time." After saying this, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Li Yunxin raised his head and looked at him. He tilted his head and thought for a moment. Suddenly he tossed the jade bottle in his hand to him. "You're not bad yourself. This is medicine. Do you still want to fight?" The Purple Knight Taoist caught the bottle. He seemed somewhat surprised, wanting to say something but hesitated. He stared at Li Yunxin for a while, then said, "No. You were seriously injured. You have the cultivation of Shi mystery. But you were able to seriously injure me. I don't know what other methods you have. With our cultivation at this level, if we really want to decide a victor, it will be a matter of life and death. I've been entrusted with a task, so I don't need to sacrifice my life and cultivation." Li Yunxin laughed. "Then I think you're a good person." The Purple Knight Taoist raised his hand slightly. "We're not friends. They could only be considered enemies who respected each other. Because of your method of hurting me, I'll give you a few words of advice. I have the divine ability of the profound realm of expansive life. But in the lifeless immortal sect, he was not considered to be at the top. Our sect's ancestors' cultivation is profound. It's not something you and I can imagine. You're alone at sea. No matter how brilliant his methods were, he was still just one person. I appreciate your talent, so I advise you to leave the Eastern Sea as soon as possible, or to recruit more helpers. The next time I come, I won't be alone. You can't stop it." As he spoke, he lowered his head and looked at the jade bottle in his palm. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Ancestor can see the future. For many years the prophecy had come true. There are powerful enemies in the sea and you will definitely be defeated. Take care of yourself." At this time, the 3 people who were swept into the sky by Li Yunxin finally landed. Li Yunxin grabbed the pheasant with his left hand and the 9th young master with his right, causing the young master to fall on the stone pillar. Only then did he smile. "That's great. Many people want to be friends with me, but you want to distance yourself from them. As for whether I will be defeated or not," he curled his lips. "My fate is up to me, not the heavens." The Purple Knight Immortal smiled. He saluted again. "Goodbye." As soon as he finished speaking, the figure disappeared. The pheasant was still dizzy. The 9th young master stared at Li Yunxin like a small ferocious beast. But because he had been injured by the pressure of the battle between the 2 super experts, he was not very fierce now. He could only shout angrily, "What do you mean? Why did you throw me away? Can I help? Do I look like I'm afraid of death?" The young master also stared at him. He looked at the direction in which the Purple Knight Immortal had escaped, and then looked at Li Yunxin. They had seen the scene of the 2 fighting in the sky, but now they still wondered if they were dreaming. That immortal, did he really leave in defeat? Oh my god, how could this Li Yunxin be so terrifying? He got up from the ground and looked at Li Yunxin again. But he found some unusual details. Mortals had to heal themselves when they were injured. Small demons with low cultivation had to do the same. Their demon power was limited. If the situation allowed, it would be less troublesome to let them recover slowly than to spend a lot of effort to use their demon power. But for a super big demon like Li Yunxin, healing his wounds was a piece of cake for them. Big demons had abundant demon power, so the wounds on the surface of their bodies could be easily covered. Even if they had serious internal injuries, they could look as good as new with a shake of their bodies. But now there were wounds on Li Yunxin's hands, face and neck. Although the wounds had disappeared and were not as horrible as before, he still felt something was wrong. But he didn't dare to say anything. Li Yunxin's strength was far beyond his imagination. Lord Donghai told him that Wei River Dragon King was only in the Shi mysterious realm. Although this realm was far beyond Xiao Zhao's reach, he had been with Lord Donghai for many years and had seen many high-level big demons. He knew that the Shi mysterious realm was only the first level of the mysterious realm. The second level was the advanced mysterious realm, and the third level was the broad mysterious realm. Beyond that was the peak of the mysterious realm. Taking another step in the peak was the Taishang Wang Qing. The Purple Knight Immortal was the third level of the mysterious realm, the broad mysterious realm. So when he saw it was him, Xiao Xiao was scared out of his wits. Didn't they say that they would test him first? He would be buried together with him. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Not only did he not dare to act rashly, but he also didn't dare to ask more questions when he saw Li Yunxin's wounds. Only the ninth young master was still angry and stared at Li Yunxin. But Li Yunxin just smiled. Of course you are no match for him and you can't help him. The ninth young master raised his eyebrows. But then he heard Li Yunxin say, "That's why I sent you away. I knew you would die but I still asked you to stay. Friends don't do that." This sentence made the ninth young master's anger dissipate by half. When he saw Li Yunxin sitting on the ground and closing his eyes to regulate his breath, his anger dissipated by half. The Baji at the peak of the true realm stamped his feet. "Alas, alas! It's all my fault." Pheasant blinked his eyes. It seemed that he couldn't believe that these words came from the ninth young master's mouth. However, Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He had already meditated. He meditated for a whole day. During this time, the wounds on his face and hands slowly healed, leaving only shallow white marks. These white marks were like the scars of mortals. It would probably take a few days for them to fade away. When he woke up again, he found the three demons in front of him. It seemed that they were protecting him. It was still a sunny day, but the sea had become the Yellow Sea. The battle with the Purple Knight Immortal had swept up all the mud from the bottom of the sea. It would take a long time for a pool of muddy water to clear, let alone a vast ocean. Li Yunxin was once impressed by Kun Wuzi's means of overturning Dongting. But now he also had this kind of power. He breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. "How long has it been?" 24 hours. The ninth young master frowned and looked at him seriously. "Are you badly hurt?" The junior colonel was tied to the same rope with Li Yunxin at this time. He was shocked by Li Yunxin's strength. Therefore he was eager to flatter Li Yunxin and said hurriedly, "Dragon King has made a great achievement by repelling the Purple Knight Immortal of the Guangxing Mystery State. It doesn't matter if you are badly hurt. It's still glorious to be hurt." Li Yunxin looked at him. "He should be more badly hurt than me." After saying this, he ignored the dumbfounded junior colonel and stood up. "But this person from the lifeless immortal school is really hard to deal with. It's weird. He has the shadow of Taoism and Shenmen when he fights. He is not like those perverts who abandon their feelings and desires. He is a normal person with feelings and desires. Compared with the cultivators of the Shenmen of the same level, he is also more powerful." Old ancestor of 10,000 years, interesting. He looked at the junior colonel again. "How many people like him are there?" The junior colonel said hurriedly, "As far as I know, he is the only one in the ocean. Dragon King can seriously hurt him. Other people must be no match for him. Well, if they come one by one." "Well, what will your master do?" "Dragon King, wait a moment." The junior colonel carefully took out a conch from his arms. He smiled at Li Yunxin and then at the ninth young master. He turned around awkwardly and put the conch on his ear. The ninth young master curled his lips. "We have a lot of treasures. I don't care about your stupid thing." The junior colonel smiled and nodded while listening. After listening for a while, he turned around in a daze. Li Yunxin was not in a hurry, but the ninth young master and Pheasant were anxious. "What's wrong? Say it." The junior colonel looked at Li Yunxin. "Say that the Purple Knight Immortal was seriously injured. His spirit left his body and went back to the Shenmen sect. Dragon King. You killed him. He beat him to death." After a long silence, Lord Donghai said. The hall that used to be worshipped by the ministers was now empty, with only 8 people. Lord Donghai was one and there were 7 others. The Dragon Kings on the sea gathered together, waiting for the news from the Purple Knight Immortal. In the morning, under the persuasion of Lord Donghai, the Dragon Kings who had just arrived finally reached an agreement. They asked the Purple Knight Immortal to kill the arrogant Dragon King of the land. They wanted to see how capable he was so that they could decide what to do next. Because the Dragon Kings also wanted to save face. Although the 9 Dragon Kings occupied a large area of water. Similar to the land, There were always some unruly big demons in the territory. They were nominally attached, but in fact they were independent. For the sake of the Dragon King of the land, they sent out all the elite troops. Even if they won easily, they would cause trouble and be looked down upon. In the end, after much discussion, they decided not to send their own people, but asked the Purple Knight Immortal of the Lifeless Immortal sect to go. After the Purple Knight Immortal left, the 7 Dragon Kings thought that maybe the Immortal could subdue Li Yunxin. They didn't have to worry. On the other hand, Lord Donghai was worried about what he should do next if such a situation really happened. But the news was, the Purple Knight Immortal was seriously injured. He forced himself to return to Penglai Island and immediately meditated in the quiet room to heal. But the injury was too serious. After 4 hours of rest, he had to immortalize his body and save his spirit. He immediately went to the Lifeless Immortal sect. Hearing this news, the 8 Dragon Kings were silent for a quarter of an hour. Chapter 661. Only the Dragon King of the East Sea was in a different mood. The 7 of them were completely shocked. There was also joy in his surprise. This way, it would be easier for him to do things. That Li Yunxin really didn't disappoint him, at least not now. Right now, the stronger he was, the happier the East Sea Dragon King was. After saying this, he stood up and paced around the hall. He paced a few steps in the hall. This is no small matter. Brothers, we have to be careful. As he said this, he observed the reactions of the Dragon King. The West Sea Dragon King was killed, and his true body is still missing. I'm next to him and I want to find him and support him until I die, but I can't find him. A few days ago, almost 10,000 people were killed by Li Yunxin and that demonic woman, and we have already lost a lot of face. Not to mention all of you, even some of the demon kings here are starting to get restless. This matter can't be tolerated anymore. In my opinion, we have to send an army and kill this scourge as soon as possible. Lord Vast, what do you think? Like the Dragon Sun on land, the 9 Dragon Kings on the sea had different natures. The Dragon King of the East Sea and the Dragon King of the West Sea had similar natures, and they were close to each other. But just like in the human world, as long as there was class and interest involved, there would be discord. The Dragon Island was protected by 3 immortal mountains. They were Penglai, Ingzhou, and Square Pot. The Dragon King of the East Sea was in charge of Penglai, the Dragon King of the West Sea was in charge of Ingzhou, and the Dragon King of the North Sea was in charge of Square Pot. The remaining 6 Dragon Kings were in charge of the 6 wild seas. This wild was the wild in the sense of wild. Among the 6 Dragon Kings, the Dragon King of the vast sea had the largest territory and the most abundant resources. The Dragon King's temperament was also the most arrogant and unruly. It was said that he often said in his dragon palace that the vast sea was equal to the West Sea plus the East Sea. My cultivation is also a bit higher than those 2. Why should I ask them to guard Imperial Dragon Island? As a result, he was indignant and had a bad relationship with the 3 island-guarding Dragon King. Actually, this was quite normal. The ruler always has a way to control his subordinates. He told Jindao Dragon King to be slightly weaker, and Wild Sea Dragon King to be slightly stronger so that they would not fight with each other, but also to ensure that they would not work together to oppose him. This was the reason why the Lord of the Eastern Sea asked the Boundless Dragon King instead of anyone else. The vast Dragon King thought highly of himself. Other than the Divine Lords, no one else was convinced. Although Li Yunxin had actually killed Taoist Master Purple Knight, who was at the Profound Realm, the vast Dragon King did not like the people of the Lifeless Immortal sect. As long as one didn't experience it personally, it was difficult to empathize. Moreover, he looked down on Lord Donghai. When Lord Donghai asked him, he knew what he would say. Lord Donghai, do you want us to be laughed at again? The vast Sea Lord had a square head and a square brain. It was said that his true form was a very fierce fish in the deep sea. His eyes were small, his nostrils were big, and his mouth was also big. When he heard Lord Donghai's question, he felt that this brother wanted to make an example out of him. He, who had always been at odds with him, was suppressed by him and had no choice but to agree. There was no more suspense in this matter. But he did not want to do so. He leaned back on the chair. Those bastards from the land, do they deserve to be called the Dragon King? What happened to the 10,000 people just now? Hey, a bunch of mobs. Without a unified command, without a commander, they won't be defeated. He spread his hands, tilted his head, and looked around at everyone. Who will be defeated? That Taoist Master Purple Knight? Hey, the Lifeless Immortal sect is independent of our 9 seas. That 10,000-year-old ancestor is said to have learned the skills of the land, which is even more incompatible with us. When I asked him to go, I didn't agree. Who knows if he colluded with those bastards from the land? Now he's dead? Hey, who saw with their own eyes how he died and how he was injured? Who saw? He spread his hands again. I think there's something fishy. That's not all, brothers. He got excited as he spoke and stood up. Lord Donghai frowned. But he didn't say anything. He just walked to his seat and sat down looking helpless. Think about where that Li Yunxin came from in the beginning. The East Sea. He turned to look at Lord Donghai and sneered. We all know. It said that the Divine Lord summoned him. But he didn't give him a way to enter the Dragon Island, so he came to the East Sea. Lord Donghai said that he wanted to replace us. He's new here and he's also in the mysterious realm. Can he rule the 9 seas alone? Do you think we're stupid? What he wants is your East Sea, right? Lord Donghai's face darkened and he stood up abruptly. Lord Haohan waved his hand. You have nothing to feel guilty about. What's wrong with listening to me? For example, let's say that the Divine Lord thinks that you, Lord Donghai, are not easy to command, so he wants to replace you with this Li Yunxin. You want to kill him but you can't. Don't look at me like that. Am I right? We all know that Li Yunxin fought with you and he came to your Penglai Island to show off and then left. So he wants us to do this with you. If we really get involved, who will protect us if we anger the Divine Lord? Am I right, brothers? 3 Dragon King nodded. The other 2 whispered to each other. Lord Donghai couldn't help but stand up and said, Get involved? Didn't you all agree to ask the Purple Knight Daoist to go? If he wanted to get involved, he would have done it long ago. Lord Haohan Dragon King sneered again. That doesn't count. It's the lifeless immortal sect that got involved. It has nothing to do with us. Lord Donghai, if you want us to help, you have to let us feel at ease. What did the Divine Lord say to you? What did he say? Let's hear it. Humph. If you don't believe me, you can ask the Divine Lord yourself, Lord Donghai said in a deep voice. The Divine Lord is powerful. Maybe she is listening to what we are talking about here. If you are not afraid that the Divine Lord will think that you don't know how to do things, feel free to ask her again. I have said before that this Li Yunxin is just a fish that stirred up trouble. We have been at ease for too long, so the Divine Lord sent him to train us. On land he colluded with the Rock King. You all know a little about what happened on land recently. Did I lie to you? Would the Divine Lord let this kind of person take charge of East Sea and Penglai? Lord Haohan, you and I don't get along. But at this time you are throwing a tantrum. He slammed the armrest. You don't know what's good for you. Lord Haohan Dragon King stared at him, his eyes shining. You scold me? Who do you think I am? Those useless soldiers and crab generals on your island? Bah. Your people are a bunch of cowards and you want us to stand up for you? What a joke. Go take care of your own business. Lord Donghai stood up abruptly, took 2 steps forward and scolded, How dare you act wildly in my territory? How dare you, a thing that eats mud at the bottom of the sea, act wildly in my territory? Then he turned around and pointed at the remaining 5 Dragon Kings, widened his eyes and yelled, Fine, you don't want to get involved? Fine, I don't care about this anymore. I have always wanted to live in seclusion with my beauties, and be a happy hermit like the ancestor 10,000 years ago. I don't want East Sea anymore, I don't want Penglai anymore. Go ahead and cause trouble. Let's see if you can still protect the East Sea without me. Whoever wants to go can go. Lord Haohan yelled, Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. I'm not afraid of you. The 2 Dragon Kings were about to walk out, but East Sea Dragon King's footsteps were fast and big. Lord Haohan was taller than him, but he walked slower, so he fell behind him. When Lord Donghai walked out of the hall, everyone knew that he was really going to leave. They hurriedly stood up and pulled Lord Donghai and Lord Haohan. After some kind words, they finally stopped. The 2 Dragon Kings sat on the chairs with gloomy faces, and neither said a word. North Sea Dragon King looked like a white-bearded grandpa with white hair and beard. He probably liked this look when he transformed. His temperament was also similar to his appearance, a bit mature and prudent. Seeing that everyone was silent, he coughed and began to smooth things over. Everyone, how nice it is to be amiable, Lord Donghai, about this, it's not necessary, He waved his hand. It's not necessary to deceive everyone, The immortal Lord is watching, how can he not know? If you ask me, He stroked his white beard, waved his hand again and frowned. Our elites are all here, it's embarrassing. But, with fewer people this, is not enough, right? No one liked to listen to him before. It was slow and slow. In the time it took for him to say one sentence, others could say three. But now no one was willing to make a sound. Lord Donghai's words, actions, and anger convinced them that he was not deceiving them. In fact, they were just a little suspicious. Lord Donghai and Lord Beihai were right. Shinryu was omnipotent, and Penglai Island was the gateway to Dragon Island. How could Shinryu not know that the 8 Dragon Kings were gathered together? If what Lord Donghai said was false, the immortal lord would have raged long ago. His silence before was somewhat similar to Lord Howhen's. But there had to be a sense of propriety. If they really messed things up, who would come out of it well? Lord Beihai said again, in my opinion, let's do it this way. Let's lead 2 armies. Go with the elites, go with the general. Fight steadily, Venerable Zai, didn't you pass on the message? Say that Li Yunxin, set up a formation and guarded the eye of the formation. That's because he knows he's weak, and needs to wait for reinforcements. What about our 2 armies? One army, guard against Zhouhai. The other army surround him, fight slowly. Grind, Lord Beihai spread his hands, grind slowly. Grind his formation, then grind his people. This immortal lord, he stopped and cupped his hands in front of his face as if he was sure that Shinryu was listening. He wants to train us. What? I thought, it's also because we usually, cause discord among the brothers, this is outrageous. Using this as an excuse to unite us, Lord Donghai leaned back and sneered, I still say the same thing. My people won't go, whoever wants to go can go. My people. He looked at Lord Howhen from the corner of his eyes. What's the use of shrimp soldiers and crab generals? How can they compare to the vast sea, vast, rich, strong troops and strong horses? Every one of them is a hero. One of them is equivalent to 3 of my people. The vast sea army captured that land mixed hair, I can't help it, alive. Lord Howhen slapped the armrest and stood up. Who are you chanting to? Chapter 662. He narrowed his eyes at Lord Donghai and sneered. Do I not know what you are thinking? Do you know that Li Yunxin is difficult to deal with and you are trying to provoke him? Even if he suffers a loss, he will still cut us down one by one. Haha, fine, I will call you Rui, Lord Beihai, I will personally lead an army. Let him see if his troops are really shrimp soldiers or crab generals. Lord Beihai frowned and waved his hand. Alas, there is no need to be impulsive. But Lord Howhen had already stood up. He glared at Lord Donghai and strode out of the hall. The other 6 looked at each other. Lord Beihai stroked his beard. Then, who will cut off the reinforcement army? No one said a word. Lord Donghai sneered again. He pointed outside the hall. Our Lord Howhen, do you think he is really reckless? Isn't he the first to take the task of encircling and suppressing Li Yunxin and leave it to us? Li Yunxin is in the mysterious realm of Shi and can kill the Purple Knight spiritual master with formations. But his reinforcement, that female monster, should be at the peak of the mysterious realm. He left this dangerous task to us, which makes us look cowardly, and he is brave. Isn't that why he made such a scene just now? Seeing that he was talking again, Lord Beihai lowered his head, as if he had fallen asleep and stopped talking. The other 4 didn't speak either and just nodded in agreement with Lord Donghai. But none of them volunteered either. Lord Donghai sighed and stood up. Alas, since that mud-eater is gone, I will not be angry with you. After all, this is a matter of the East Sea. I will lead this army. Hearing this, Lord Beihai seemed to wake up again. Alas, this, Lord Donghai, you are really responsible. Lord Donghai sneered and strode out of the hall. By now it was already night. The sky was full of bright stars and there was a slight chill outside the hall. At the same time, Li Yunxin was sitting on a stone pillar to heal himself. Lord Donghai left the hall, lingered around for a while, and then went straight to Huang Guanzi's residence. When he was outside the hall, his face was still full of anger. It was as if he was angry that his brothers weren't united and that they weren't able to send out their elites. But as soon as he entered Huang Guanzi's courtyard, the anger on his face disappeared and was replaced by happiness. As soon as she entered the bamboo gate, she called out, "Mister, do you still have the thin scales from last time? Do you have any wine? I'mo use poison." Huang Guanzi came out of the bamboo house to welcome him. He looked at Donghai Jun and smiled. "Is it done?" Lord Donghai clapped his hands and laughed. "It's done, it's done, it's done." Not only did he succeed, he even asked that mud-eating guy to surround Li Yunxin. This kind of boorish fellow, is he qualified to play mind games with me? I'll play him in the palm of my hand. He was inspired. As he sat down on the stone bench, he excitedly recounted what had happened in the hall. In the end he laughed and said, "Then the one who eats mud he must suffer." Even if Li Yunxin couldn't kill him, he had to severely injure his army. Haha, that's what he gets for swaggering around and not even putting me in his eyes. Where's the fish? Huang Guanzi smiled. The weather is not good. I didn't catch it today. Lord Donghai was in high spirits. Where's the wine? I only want wine. A pot of warm moonlight wine. Huang Guanzi said lightly, My lord is already drunk. Why do you still want wine? Lord Donghai was stunned. He stared at him for a long time before he opened his mouth. I was too proud. You're right. I don't deserve to be taught a lesson. Huang Guanzi sat down in front of him and waved his hand. A cup of green tea appeared on the stone table. I just want to remind my lord, besides Red Lady, there's still the owner of Southern Wood Jew. We previously interrogated the spy of Southern Wood Jew and know that the owner of Southern Wood Jew is coming. If your army meets both of them at the same time, how will you deal with them? Lord Donghai was in a good mood. He raised his hand and walked on the stone table with his index and middle fingers. I'll run as soon as I see them. I didn't eat the meat of that Lord Dongting. I didn't offend the owner of Southern Wood Jew. What can they do to me if they protect me? Huang Guanzi smiled and shook his head. My lord, if you really see them you don't have to run. You just need to sit on the mountain and watch them fight. Lord Donghai frowned. Oh? Tell me in detail, master. Huang Guanzi cleared his throat and said in a low voice, Red Lady's father is Lord Dongting. Lord Dongting is also an affectionate person. He came to Dragon Island and his whereabouts are unknown. Human Dao was dead, but a fiendish demon who had mastered mystical realm would not die without a sound. I guess he had a disagreement with Lord Donghai and was detained on Dragon Island. Lord Donghai has 9 sons on the land. King Rock has a high level of cultivation. Why is old Lord Dongting the only one left? There's a deep meaning. He won't be killed easily. Red Lady is capricious and impulsive. But after these days she should understand that her lord's father is probably on Dragon Island. He must want to go to Dragon Island. That's why she helped Li Yunxin. Maybe she wants Li Yunxin to take her there. Let's talk about Moon Anju. I came to Dragon King for Li Yunxin. It's for the entrance to the netherworld. Although Moon Anju has always been my enemy, he won't act impulsively for his own benefit. Then Moon Anju's people first went to Penglai Island and tried to get close to Lord Donghai, and then Moon Anju's master came personally. I'm afraid they are after something big. They have always been active on the land. Now they are also coming here and want to befriend Dragon King. What? It must be for the entrance to the netherworld. So, Huang Guanzi smiled calmly, they all want to go to Dragon Island. And the Dragon Kings on the sea, especially the 3 island guarding Dragon Kings, are the key to go to Dragon Island. Lord Shihai has been mistakenly killed by Red Lady. Only Lord Donghai and Lord Beihai are left. Lord Beihai is cunning and not as magnanimous as Lord Donghai. If you want to take advantage of someone, do you want to take advantage of the magnanimous or the cunning? Lord Donghai blinked. You? Forget it. Tell me more. Huang Guanzi cupped his hands and apologized. So they will not harm Lord Donghai. On the contrary, Red Lady is in love with Li Yunxin. She has the mentality of a little girl and is very overbearing. Hearing this, Lord Donghai sighed. Sigh? If Madame Mingyue is also, Huang Guanzi coughed, Lord Donghai, that Moon Anju's master has been giving Li Yunxin a lot of help on the land, but she has also used him. Once Red Lady meets such a girl and sees that she is also very outstanding, how can she not be jealous? She is a demoness after all, different from humans. There is no reason to reason with her. Maybe the 2 of them will fight. At that time, when the 2 of them fight, Lord Donghai only needs to command an army and watch from afar. Once the winner is decided, he will lead them to Li Yunxin. At that time, Huang Guanzi laughed. Didn't Lord Donghai want Lord Haohan to die? Then he will definitely die. He is picky, but he doesn't know that he is picking a dead end. Lord Donghai was silent for a while, then slapped the table heavily. Wonderful. Meow. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Haha, getting Mr. is like getting a treasure. Wonderful. He called out in anger, then frowned. Wait a minute. Mr., I have lured one of them over. They have defeated Lord Haohan. But what if the rest of us can't control them? What should we do? Huang Guanzi smiled calmly. Lord Donghai worries too much. There is still the Immortal Lord and the Lifeless Immortal Sect. I don't know what the Lifeless Immortal Sect is planning, but since they have been operating on the ocean for tens of thousands of years, They will definitely not sit by and watch the enemy invade. Moreover, this is the worst-case scenario. Moonange's master is able to fight with me for so long, she must have something extraordinary. I guess she will carefully control the situation, make it go in your favor. At that time she may still find Lord Donghai. I only hope that at that time, Lord Donghai will remember my hard work. Lord Donghai waved his hand. Don't say that. One should not be hesitant in doing things. I will not let Mr. down. The two talked like this for the whole night. For example, the military system under Lord Howhan's command, how many demon generals he had, what kind of abilities he had, where he might march from, and what kind of means he might use, they all made deductions. Lord Donghai knew about it, but Huang Guanzi seemed to be more familiar with it. The two talked for the whole night, but neither of them felt tired. Instead, they were in high spirits. After a long time of daybreak, an object in Lord Donghai's robe began to vibrate. He waved his hand, and the ninth young master's voice came from the void. We have a lot of treasures. I don't care about your broken things. He paused for a moment, then said to Huang Guanzi, those are my people. After that he didn't say anything. After confirming the identity of the junior colonel, he told him everything he had discussed with Huang Guanzi. He was a profound realm demon lord, and he had experienced Li Yunxin's power. Therefore, although he was surprised that the Purple Knight Taoist was killed by Li Yunxin, it was not to the extent that he was shocked. But he didn't know that his words had scared the junior colonel so much that he couldn't speak. After telling the ninth young master about it and taking back his listening conch, he couldn't speak for a long time. He just stared at Li Yunxin as if he were looking at some terrible beast. Li Yunxin glanced at him indifferently. Oh, is he dead? That's reasonable. I spent so much effort. It's not right if I didn't kill him. What a pity. What else did he say? The junior colonel seemed to wake up from a dream. He hurriedly told him what Lord Donghai had said. In the end he said timidly, my lord also said that the boundless army will come next time. He knows that Dragon King's cultivation is profound. He can disguise himself with the art of painting, which can't be seen through by ordinary techniques. Please, Dragon King, help me change my appearance in case of trouble. Li Yunxin frowned as he listened to him. At this time he fell into a thoughtful silence. Then he said, your lord seems to know the art of painting very well. The junior colonel hurriedly said, there is a master around my lord. It is said that he knows some painting methods. It should be that master who gave my lord the idea. Oh, a master. Li Yunxin nodded. Is he from the Freemasonry or Moonanju? The junior colonel was stunned. Dragon King has a good foresight. He is a master of the Freemasonry. It is said that he used to be one of the 6 elders in charge of the Wanyu Luo cave of the 18 heavens of Daotong. His Taoist name is Huang Guanzi. Dragon King came from the land. You should have heard of him, right? Li Yunxin thought for a while and laughed. Oh, of course I have heard of him. When I was in Yunshan I destroyed their lair. There is a list of the masters of the past generations in it. I have heard of him, ha. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Note 1. This quote comes from Lin Qingxuan's essay, A Pot of Wine Under the Moonlight. Chapter 663. Ever since Li Yunxin defeated the Purple Knight Immortal, he had been acting like a master. He didn't take credit or be arrogant. He was so calm as if he was just swatting a fly. He was also calm and cool when he heard the words of Lord Donghai. But when he said these words he suddenly smiled. His mouth was smiling but his eyes were not curved. It was a fake smile but not a smile. The junior colonel had seen a lot of moodiness of big demons. Seeing his smile, he was shocked and almost jumped out of his throat. He hurriedly said, Dragon King? I didn't say anything wrong. I know that the Dragon King and the Freemasonry have always been at odds. But I thought that since we're cooperating with the Lord now, Li Yunxin waved his hand and smiled, do I blame you? What? Don't you see I'm smiling? Ninth young master. Am I smiling? The ninth young master stared at him and frowned. You are angry. Li Yunxin suddenly stopped smiling. He snorted, let's get to work. The ninth young master was confused. He looked around and then at Li Yunxin. What to do? Li Yunxin suddenly became irritable. Do what you should do, go play somewhere. I, Dragon King, am going to set up a formation. After saying this he jumped into the sea and disappeared. The 3 people on the stone pillar looked at each other and didn't know what happened to him. After a while, the ninth young master also jumped into the sea to find Li Yunxin and asked Pheasant to keep an eye on the junior colonel. The junior colonel smiled bitterly and said that he was tied to a rope and couldn't run away. In fact, he wanted to say, "He is no match for me even if he wants to run away." But he swallowed his words halfway. He remembered that Li Yunxin killed the Purple Knight Immortal with the cultivation of Shi mysterious realm. These Lu people were all monsters. Who knew what kind of unexpected ability this chicken spirit had? However, the chicken spirit, it seems that there are a few chickens in the town of Penglai Island. He makes up his mind that if he survives this time and becomes the general of the left, he will see if those chickens can become Taoists. Just like this Wei River Dragon King, having a chicken spirit as his follower was also a very impressive thing. Speaking of which, that Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin was indeed admirable. As soon as he thought of this, he hurriedly spat twice. He felt that he had been disloyal to his Jun Shang. Shanji looked at him vigilantly. "Who are you spitting on?" The junior colonel widened his eyes and smiled apologetically. "I said the wrong thing." The ninth young master searched for the whole afternoon. Finally he saw Li Yunxin in a strait. Li Yunxin said that he was setting up a formation, but in fact he was not doing anything. He stood alone at the bottom of the gorge. The strait was not wide and only two people could walk side by side. Li Yunxin had obviously been standing there for quite a while. The mud that had been stirred up by him had fallen back down, covering his body, head and face. If it were not for the monster power that he did not conceal, the ninth young master would think that he was a puppet on a sunken ship. He hurriedly landed and pushed away the mud around him with his supernatural power. He frowned and blew a series of bubbles from his mouth. He patted on Li Yunxin's body twice. "Why did you make yourself a mud monkey? It's so dirty." Li Yunxin was silent for a while. He gently pushed away his hand and sighed, "Which part of me is not dirty?" The ninth young master stared at him suspiciously. "What's wrong with you?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while again. "Ninth young master. Let me ask you, when you first knew that your father was the Lord Dongting and that you were actually a key to the inhibition of Dongting, how did you feel?" The ninth young master blinked. "How did I feel? How could I feel? Monsters are like this. You eat me, I eat you. The powerful bully the weak. How could I feel?" He paused after saying this. It seemed that he knew that such an answer did not satisfy Li Yunxin. He scratched his head. "I was angry. I'll take revenge when I become powerful." "Oh, but he was also my father. Didn't you say that he was actually protecting me, father?" Li Yunxin said softly. "Is he trustworthy?" The ninth young master was stunned for a while. Suddenly he frowned again. "Ah, you found your father?" Li Yunxin raised his hand and wiped his face. He wiped the mud off his face. He said that the Freemason beside King Donghai was Huang Guanzi, one of the 6 elders in charge of the Wanyu Luo cave in the 18 paradises of Daotong. "I've heard of this name. I didn't see it on a directory in Yunshan." Speaking of this, Li Yunxin reached out and picked out the red dot between his eyebrows. He held it in his palm. "I heard it from Li Chunfeng." "Li Chunfeng? To me he is like Lord Dongting to you," Li Yunxin said lightly. "I mentioned it to you." The ninth young master realized something and stopped talking. He also mentioned the art. How many people in the world know the art? Li Yunxin stood still for a moment and shook his head. "After I left Dingzhou there were many surprises along the way, but it was not dangerous. When I was in danger there was always a force to help me, so that I could barely get through it. I used to think that I was too capable. But I slowly realized that no matter how capable I am, there will be times when I make mistakes. This time I came to Donghai to provoke King Donghai to cooperate with me and fight against those Dragon King. I said something and he went back and thought about it. He believed me and agreed. It was not difficult. I thought it was because I was more capable. But now that I think about it, the Donghai Dragon King should not have been so easily fooled. You should know that I had planned to do this in half a month." The ninth young master's eyes widened. "That Freemason is your father? Not dead. Helping you? Not dead." Li Yunxin revealed a slight cold smile. "I have both parents now. Then I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing." The ninth young master muttered, What are you going to do?" Li Yunxin was silent for a moment. You and I are actually very similar. We are also in someone else's plan. We can't get away." The ninth young master shook his head. No, I owe you a favor. Haven't I already gotten away? You will sooner or later." But Li Yunxin interrupted him. "Ninth young master, you should go." "Go?" The ninth young master thought for a moment. "All right, I'll go up first. You should be alone. Ah, this is such bad luck. No one would be happy about it. I mean, you should leave Donghai. Find a place to hide on the land. With your current cultivation and the treasure I gave you, you should be able to protect yourself. The ninth young master originally turned around. He suddenly turned around. What do you mean? But Li Yunxin looked at him calmly. You never got away. Under Yunshan, I promised to give you a new body in order to coax you to give me the translucent jade scroll. There is something in it that can help me control the mother plate of heaven and earth. In Yunshan, I used a scale of the Shinryu to sculpt your body. In fact, part of the reason was to find out the methods of the art saint, so I used you as a test subject. And it worked. Once it worked, I didn't want to alert the Shinryu. Shinryu's clone came to Yunshan and made a deal with me. Li Yunxin spoke at a moderate pace. The ninth young master heard it clearly. He stared at him at first, then slowly frowned. After that, his brows relaxed. He stared straight at Li Yunxin, as if he had returned to the temple on that rainy night and met him for the first time. Li Yunxin did not avoid his gaze. I sculpted your body, which is equivalent to sculpting a portion of dragon energy out of thin air. You are the incarnation of the Shinryu, so you can't harm her. As for our Shinryu, she has lost a lot of her power due to some reason. Now she is eager to become stronger. I have this method so she can use it. I brought you here to bring you to the Shinryu. She absorbs your power to become stronger so I can create more beings like you for her to use. You were part of our plan from the beginning to the end. You are a consumable. You have never been able to escape. Just like me. Now you understand. Li Yunxin said. You can go. The two of them looked at each other for a while. The ninth young master suddenly approached him with a serious expression. He looked at the Shinryu's blood in his hand and said in a low voice, There is someone nearby, isn't there? I know you are trying to trick me again. It's true. The ninth young master. The ninth young master looked at him suspiciously. He took 2 steps back and laughed. Then you must be joking with me. Ah. Li Yunxin looked at him silently. He shook his head slightly. The ninth young master did not say anything. Then I will kill you. He suddenly became furious and punched Li Yunxin in the chest. There was a loud bang. Due to the terrifying power, a huge bubble appeared next to the two of them. The strait was shattered by the power, and the gorge became a basin. The seawater surged wildly, and the terrible shock spread out in all directions. The seabed, which was already fragile due to the battle with the Purple Knight enlightened, shook violently. Everything that had just calmed down was thrown back into the sea. Li Yunxin took the punch, but his body did not move. He did not even take a step back. He shook his head calmly. You can't kill me. You can go. The ninth young master punched him in the chest again. Mist rose around him and he roared like a beast. Why did you tell me? Why did you tell me? Isn't it good to let me die like this? Li Yunxin grabbed the ninth young master's 4th punch. Even the furious Lord Tongtian could not break free from the power of a mystic realm demon. He punched again with his other hand, but Li Yunxin caught his other hand. No. He looked at the ninth young master's eyes. Because we are friends. Friends? The ninth young master showed his fangs, and his eyes flashed with cruelty. I have never had any friends. I see you as a friend now. Li Yunxin pushed the ninth young master 3 steps away. Take Shanji away. If I still deserve your forgiveness. The ninth young master was about to pounce on him. However, after taking a heavy step forward, he paused again. Of course I will take him away. He gritted his teeth and said, If I can't kill you, I will tear him apart. Ah, you can fight with your father here. Aha, now you know he is scheming against you. Aha, I will wait to see how you fight on land. Ah. I won't fight with him. Li Yunxin smiled. Sheng Guanyu is also in the East Sea. Ah. I wanted to save her. But she and he are with the Lord of the East Sea. Ah. I won't fight with them. Li Yunxin let out a sigh. I will let them go. Let's see if they want me to die too. The ninth young master looked at him in the clouds like a poisonous snake about to pounce on him. Who knows if you are telling the truth? Okay, you stay here. Just wait. I will come back for you sooner or later. I will settle the scores with you one by one. Settle the scores. There was a loud bang. The demon at the peak of the true realm suddenly jumped out. Li Yunxin was still motionless. After a long time, the sand in the sea fell again and covered him again. He opened his mouth slightly and made a sound like a breeze. Family reunion. When night fell, Li Yunxin returned to the stone pillar, dripping wet. The junior colonel didn't leave. He seemed to be at a loss. When he saw Li Yunxin, he hurried to greet him. Dragon King? Li Yunxin waved his hand. Did he say anything? The junior colonel was stunned for a while before he guessed what he was thinking. Dragon King. If you are asking about the Lord Tongtun? He rushed up wrapped in a cloud of mist and took that person away. He seemed to say, let's go, and nothing else. I don't think he said it to me, so I didn't dare to follow him. Dragon King, what's the plan next? Li Yunxin raised her hand and waved it in the air. Immediately, Xiao Zhao's appearance changed into that of a pheasant. Then he nodded and sat down by the reef. He sat facing the bright moon for the whole night. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.